Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the December 10th City Council Special Meeting and Work Session. Call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and Brandon is on Zoom. Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
How
Sorry,
you
I can't
doing?
be there in person.
You sound like you should be at home. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so first on the agenda, we have public comments. And if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment, if you'd raise your hand. And when I call you, come to the podium, state your name and mailing address. Keep it under 3 minutes and be kind and respectful. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to be kind and respectful this evening and speak? Steve?
Thank you. Steve Wade, PO Box 1051, Cannon Beach, Oregon. I made some copies of my previous comments that I've presented to both the short-term rental unit task force and to the city council. Just as a summary of my thoughts, also several of the sentiments of the folks that signed the petition prior to my comment, the STR group task force. So you have those before you, and I just wondered if you have any questions at all, I'll be here throughout the meeting, throughout the discussion. So please feel free. Thank you very much for consideration again.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
Comment?
Yeah.
I would,
Okay, Andrew?
Andrew Connery, PO Box 664. Oh, I just rode my bike. I wasn't expecting to come in the door.
Take a deep breath.
So I am here to speak in support of recreational fires and fire pits. When I moved to Cannon Beach, I didn't know anybody, 0 people. One of my neighbors happened to have a fire pit that he used regularly. We had, all the neighbors would come out. This is how I met the community. I became part of the community at these kind of gatherings. Got to know people in my neighborhood in a way I never would if it relied on having people to host inside and worry about a mess. And not to mention just the calming, warmth, nurturing feeling of a fire that you could cook on and be warmed by. I feel like maybe the reason this was put on the agenda is someone had a problem with fire pits from an STR that were, becoming too frequent or whatever it is. That sounds like an STR problem. And I just want to say I support, having gathering around a fire with people, that you know or don't know and getting to know each other. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make a public comment? If you'd raise your hand. Okay, one last chance for the audience. And anyone else on Zoom? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll start with our action items. The first action item is the city manager evaluation results from 2024. And Ashley is here to present. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. And the first item on the agenda for me for tonight is the City Manager's Annual Review. Just to catch the Council and the audience up on where we are in this process. Each year, the Council reviews Bruce's performance ahead of his anniversary date, which is December 1st. This year, we started the process with an executive session on November 13th. The Council met in executive session and discussed St. Denis's performance against the pre-established criteria. Then the Council met with myself and Bruce present on November 25th in executive session and discussed the results of the evaluation with Bruce. Tonight is ending the process, typically pursuant to the employment agreement between Bruce and the city at the conclusion of successful evaluation. the city manager can request a merit-based increase. This year, it's my understanding that Bruce has not requested an increase, but has requested an alternative recognition of his performance throughout the year. So all that is required of the council this evening is to pass a motion. There's a suggested motion in the materials, recognizing the conclusion of the evaluation and that the assessment for this year for Bruce was a positive evaluation. I'm available for questions if the council has any.
Are there any questions?
I'm wondering what this alternative recognition throughout the year looks like.
Bruce, would you like to discuss that with the council?
Sure. What I suggested is that if there was an inclination to provide a step increase or whatever, that in lieu of that, the council use that money as seed money, sort of an event for the people that run our communities. That was something that Bible City, and it was very much appreciated. It was kind of like one of the social events of the season, but it got people together in a social setting as opposed to the usual professional setting that they were used to working in. So it's maybe now it might be a good time for something like that to happen.
Any other questions or comments? Brandon, you're going to raise your hand if you have questions.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Well, I will move to approve the results of City Manager St. Dennis performance evaluation completed in October 2024. Council agreed St. Dennis successfully met or exceeded expectations in his duties as city manager.
Now, did you say November or October?
I thought I said November.
Okay, good. I thought I heard October. We're gonna
I
go on back.
meant to say November. I did not say November.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Just real quick, we had a request for people to speak up because they're not able to hear in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Councilor Kerr,
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Next action item, and raise your hand if you can't hear me. Okay,
Can't hear, I couldn't hear anything Bruce had to say.
okay, can you hear me
I can right now.
right now? Okay, well, I'll speak up. Okay, next action item is collective bargaining agreement between the city of Cannon Beach and the Cannon Beach Police Officers Guild.
Okay,
And- Ashley, go
Yep,
ahead.
council, this is also my agenda item. So the city's bargaining team and the bargaining team for the Police Officers Guild reached a tentative agreement during a mediation session that was held in October of this year. The mediation sessions went very well. The union's bargaining unit, so all of the employees who have already ratified or accepted this proposal. And so the last step is to bring it before the city council. And if the city council agrees, it will be effective upon the city council's ratification. The pertinent, or I'd say the most important changes in this collective bargaining agreement, which is effective for 3 years, is a wage increase of 4.75%, retroactive to July 1st of this year. Another wage increase or cost of living increase next July of 3.75%. And then a final cost of living increase on July 1st of 2026 of 2.5%. The city also agreed to recognize Juneteenth as a city holiday and to increase the amount of comp time employees can roll over from year to year. We've also agreed to some changes in the detective pay and also training pay, and to allow all employees and not just police officers to benefit from the fitness incentive. There are other amendments to the collective bargaining agreement, which are included in this packet. However, they're mostly legally required updates such as changes to union rights, recognizing the implementation of Paid Leave Oregon, and some other smaller operational and administrative updates. We've included both the red line version and a clean copy of the proposed successor CBA. Before moving on from this agenda topic, I wanted to thank Bruce, as always, for being a great partner in these negotiations, and also to thank the union's bargaining team, which consisted of Joe Bowman, Valerie Mannix, and Sylvia Avia. As always, or some of those members are returning, a very professional group. We had some great discussions, and I think everybody is happy with this result. So once again, a successful union negotiation, and we look forward to discussing it with them again in another 3 years. So with that, I can take any questions.
Are there any questions? Would like to make motion?
I would.
Thank you.
I'm sure Brandon would, but I move to authorize the city manager to sign the contract agreement between the city of Cannon Beach and Cannon Beach Police Officers Guild.
Second?
Thank you, Brandon. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Ashley. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Steve. We have the findings of fact and conclusion of law for Brett Burton appeal planning commission decision. Deny a setback reduction request on an undeveloped lot near the intersection of South Hemlock and Center Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So at the meeting on December 3rd, the council made a tentative decision to deny Mr. Burton's appeal of a setback of reduction and requested that staff bring back findings. The council adopted the plan commission's findings, but also there were a couple points that were brought up during the hearing that staff wanted to address. So there are some additional information that talk about clear objective standards, a requirement for the geologic hazard report and width for utility placement and other public purposes. That staff added some additional written information to help support the decision to deny the request. And so we are recommending that the council move to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law for appeal 24-09.
Are there any questions?
I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law for the Brett Burton appeal -14-109.
Second?
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
I do have one question. It has nothing to do with this. What are they doing on that other,
Building a home.
they're building a home, okay.
Right now, there was the need to, it's called a wall. And so they're replacing the existing wall, basically a retaining wall. So that is the Taylor property, and that house was approved to build a single family home.
There's no setback on that one.
There was a setback reduction for an existing stairway, but the home itself, it was just a little section. The home itself is meeting the 15-foot setback.
Steve, wasn't one of the things about, the approval was based on them was the retaining wall because it was already there. Did they talk at the time that this went in front of the planning commission about replacing the retaining wall?
Yes, that was a little bit of a discussion. Yes. Yes. So they're well aware of that. Staff brought that back to them and informed them of that information.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the special meeting and open the work session. And we will have the planning commissioners and design review board come on up or be on Zoom.
So
Majority are on Zoom.
can you promote the list from the last meeting?
Hi, Jay.
Oh, is it time? Is it go time? Okay.
It is. We're just getting everybody joined, please. You want to see?
I'm gonna have a photo of that, okay? Pretty cool. Family style. Okay. So who's gonna be running the slideshow?
I can give you a
Clicker?
clicker if you'd like. Sure.
You do clicker and then when you go. Great. I see you in person. Yeah. Okay, good evening.
Evening.
Let me get in here. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to present. My name is Steph Spondor. I am an affordable housing developer. I work with an organization called Related Northwest. You finding it there? Okay. So on the screen, we're going to go through a little bit of presentation. The first part is just a little bit of background about Related and what we do. And then we're going to talk about a project that we are working on in the city of Seaside. Small factoid, I actually grew up in Seaside, Oregon and graduated from Seaside High in 1993. And actually, Mayor Knopp, formerly known as Mrs. Knopp, was my computer teacher in junior high. So anyways, I want to go to the next slide. So Related Northwest is a national development company headquartered actually in New York. They began developing affordable housing 40 years ago. And 33 years ago, they came out west and have been developing in California. 6 years ago, I opened an office for them in Portland, Oregon. Yep. So here's some examples of the different types of housing. These are kind of in context of an urban setting. We do urban and suburban and rural and coastal communities. So there's a little bit of everything. I don't know if anybody's familiar with like Hudson Yards in New York. That's Related. So they did Hudson Yards, the Vessel, the Edge, some of these really like highfalutin buildings. That's not what we do in the Northwest. We're really focusing on affordable housing, but we are affiliated with an organization that has a really broad reach, one of the largest private developers in the country. Slide. So this is our team. These are some of our projects. Over the last 6 years, we've been really busy. Prior to that, actually was the director of real estate development for Central City Concern, which is a smaller nonprofit organization in Portland that works with homeless housing, addiction recovery services. That's not specifically what I'm doing here. Affordable housing means a lot of different types of housing. So under the umbrella of affordable, it could be workforce housing, it could be senior affordable, it could be family affordable, it could be homeless housing, intergenerational. There's a lot of things under that umbrella. And then I'll kind of drill down into the specifics of what we're talking about for the Seaside project. This is my lovely team who have agreed to come work with me and make this office very successful. So that's Ann Silverberg isn't with us. She's actually located out of the San Francisco office and oversees the Northern California and the Northwest presence. So a few things to know about when we talk about affordable housing as a developer. We are a long-term owner and operator, meaning when we develop these projects, it's not like you go and sell them on the market after the fact. It's a very long-term hold. Nationally, Related owns over 55,000 units of affordable housing, and they don't do that by selling. They do that by acquiring and developing. Big commitment to sustainability. We really, I think, when you think about what our value proposition is, I really believe it's complexity, so we can work on really complicated things. We're known for execution. I'm very good at closing deals and getting the funding from public. I'll talk about how we go about getting funding to actually help us with restricted rent, low income housing. I also think creativity, growing up on the coast, the thing that kept me engaged besides sports, was art. And so I really do bring a lot of authenticity and creativity to all of the developments that we're working on. A lot of the properties that we work on are public-private partnerships. So where a city or jurisdiction is bringing land or different funding opportunities, and we're executing on their behalf to bring community benefit. Next slide. So with that community benefit, we have done all types of things like co-locating libraries into our affordable housing, co-locating ground use space, you name it. We have all kinds of different mixed use communities. Those are some examples. And when we do this, we endeavor, you can go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. We're on the same page. And when we work on these projects, it's kind of from cradle to grave. So from the inception of, finding the site to bringing in the financing, to going through design, getting through permit, going through construction, getting it leased up, converting to permanent debt, and then continuing on doing asset management. So we're involved in the entire process. Now we work with experts, so we'll bring in third-party construction managers, we'll bring in third-party architects, we'll bring in engineering firms to help us make good decisions, but we are constantly involved in the development of those properties. This is kind of a picture displaying some of the partnerships. So we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. We are a for-profit developer. It's really, in my opinion, having been in affordable housing for over 20 years, tax status. Because when I was in a nonprofit to where I am now at a for-profit, we literally do the same work every day. But that being said, we're always bringing in nonprofits into our deal to bring greater services to the community. So a lot of the times it's not just about the sticks and the bricks and the development, it's about the programming to help support the residential community that we are serving. So for example, partners could include Central City Concern, Catholic Charities, Central Cultural, Northwest Housing Alternatives, Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, Boys and Girls Club, you name it. We work with a lot of housing authorities. So we are always looking for really great service providers to assist, so where we can leverage their regional expertise and outreach. Next slide. These are a few examples of some of the community space and community organizations that we're working with. So we co-located a Boys and Girls Club in one of our communities for an after-school program, and they also do a summer camp, which has been really successful. Vide PDX is in North Portland in the St. John's neighborhood. That particular service provider comes in and does an after-school arts and music program. So we have a music recording studio in there where the kids are learning like music technology, things like that. Next. So you all have access to these slides. I'm not going to go into great depth, but we'll just kind of click through of some of the communities that we've developed locally in the Northwest. This is the first one. This is my first child for Related, St. Cedar Commons. So this was for permanent supportive housing. So this was like formerly homeless individuals partnering with Central City Concern. Right across the street, we did a family housing community called Crescent Court, 138 units, studios, 1s, 2s, 3 bedrooms. That's the one with the co-located Boys and Girls Club. That's the inner courtyard there. We take a lot of pride in our design and the aesthetic and making sure that we're matching the neighborhood. So this isn't something that I would recommend for a coastal community, but in Southeast Division in Portland, this really does fit in with the fiber of the design and the neighborhood. This Daniela and I, our first child,
Yes.
Cathedral Village in the St. John's neighborhood, 110 units. Slide there. We did a mural. We did, we didn't do a big playground in this one because there's a big park right next door that the kids can go to. But we're always thinking about if it's family housing, we're doing playgrounds, we're doing tot lots. And we're really, this is the one that has the music recording studio and that is great. We just actually had a seasonal celebration where we were serving turkey and ham and all that stuff for Thanksgiving.
And fairy gardens.
And I did do a fairy garden that got thrashed within like a month, so it didn't last, but it was a lovely gesture. This is over by Washington Square Mall, 144 units. And, do a lot with, interior, and it was a very complicated site, a lot of topography to work with. One thing I think, when developing affordable housing, you have to be really cognizant of is safety and security and making sure that it's a clean site. So, I've been developing or working in affordable housing for 20 years all along the West Coast, and design is really critical with lighting and security and cameras and affordable housing to maintain and make sure that we have a safe community. So we do a lot of concerted effort in the design front to make sure it's a really well contemplated, property. This is one that we're in design on right now. It's a big one. It's in the Montevilla. It's gorgeous. If anybody wants to come into Portland and do site tours, we'd love to take you through. Keep going. So this is a rendering. So this is what the concept is, but it's literally looks like this. So. And that one, we're actually doing a multicultural reading room. So like a library. And so we're working with other like smart reading program and what is it? Linda Lettre?
Yeah.
That's doing culturally specific reading materials, so translated reading materials, because it's going to serve an immigrant population. Keep going. Yep.
This is PSH.
Yep, right next door. Okay, so beyond the developments, my last background slide. Beyond the development, we're always looking for opportunities for community engagement and outreach, because we know that well-developed properties aren't just about the design and the crime prevention and, the thoughtful programs. It's also about connecting with the residents in the outlying communities. So we've done community gardens that we've built and brought together our teams. I actually donate starts from my own garden every year. We did a book fair for the school so the kids could take home books that they got to keep for over the summer. We've done food bank drives, we give out turkeys, so you name it. We always look for the spirit of what that neighborhood community needs, and we work on doing that, and we memorialize it during groundbreakings, the holiday seasons, and also the grand openings. We do big events. Okay, so now we're going to talk about North 40 here. Danielle, I'm going to kick it off and you're going to, yep, okay. So this is a rendering concept of what we think part of this community is going to look like here. We'll get into going to the next. So locationally, this is on the old high school site, kind of south of the baseball diamond. And this was competitively awarded through an RFP that the city of Seaside put out. And we responded to, I think there were a number of respondents, and we had the fortune of being awarded. So we've been working with the city of Seaside on a concept and working to develop that design. So it's about a 1.85 acre parcel. We think we're going to get about 69 units, which will be studios, 1, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. It is a workforce housing. So when we talk about workforce housing, let's talk about that a little bit, because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because it's used very liberally. And I'm always like, well, So when we say a workforce housing, we are talking about still Section 42 housing, which is considered low-income housing tax credits. Low-income housing tax credits are a federal tax credit that is allocated by the state. And there are certain provisions with income restrictions. So this is 60% and lower. Now you can add 80% AMI units up to 80%, but on a blended basis, it has to be at 60%. That's what qualifies you for the low-income housing tax credit, which makes up about 25% of your capital stack. So that's 25% of the sources to cover for the development. So imagine you could charge, I don't know what market is, but I imagine it's like 90% around here. of AMI, 80 to 90%. You might be able to charge more, but this is a long-term restricted through a covenant that the state requires when you take these tax credits that are 60 years affordability. So this will be a long-term affordable housing solution for the city of Seaside. And up there, I don't know if you can read that, but certainly can't. That is, you can get this online too, but it's basically for Clatsop County, what the rent limits are for 60% and what the household incomes. So when people come in to get onto the wait list, they go through an income verification, they go through a background check. There's no sex offenders, no violent criminals. It's very rigorous, much more so than your typical housing. That's not something that's done in just the housing next door, but because it's federally funded, there are certain criteria. We also are subject to all kinds of tax code and fair housing rules and all of those things. So it's got a lot of compliance things, but that's what we do well. Next slide. So, this site, basically is straddled by Roosevelt and Holiday. And what we did is we put 3-story pods, basically. So this is competitively awarded projects. So just because you got the land doesn't mean it's a slam dunk. We still have to go after the tax credits and the private activity bonds and the subsidy. So we're always thinking about cost effectiveness, balanced with durability, because you cannot recapitalize these projects for 15 years, meaning you can't refinance, you can't go in and change the capital. So for 15 years, the durability really, really matters. So we really think about like really good cladding, really good finishes, really thoughtful design that's going to have longevity. We thought about the neighborhood and what is similar, not going up too high. There's zoning height restrictions and setbacks. So we really thought about that. This gets us to about 69 units. There is a single family residence. I don't know. Do we have a cursor ability? No.
There's no thing.
Button at the top.
Yeah.
It's so fancy.
There
Okay.
we go.
So that is a single family residence that's kind of, sandwiched into this 1.85 acres that we are going to be working with to bring about maybe a better development. I'll leave it at that. But you want to point to the community building? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So up there, right next to Holiday, is going to be a single-story community building that we plan to run property management and an after-school program with a tot lot adjoined to it. One of the cool things about this site that I'm super excited about, not just the fact that it is my old high school site, which makes me very excited, but it's also the city of Seaside is planning in redeveloping this adjacent lot into a really cool park. So these families are going to have the opportunity to experience that amenity right out their door, which, oftentimes in affordable housing, there's a lot of barriers to access a lot of things, because they have barriers of transportation and things of that nature. It's fairly walkable because there's a sidewalk that can take you all the way downtown, which is awesome. Next slide. Do you want to talk about the unit layouts a little bit, or just the unit sizes and what we were thinking?
Yep. So the unit sizes for the buildings, it ranges, as Steph mentioned, from studios to 3 bedrooms. And we'll have laundry located on the first floor of each of the buildings. Related standards usually have larger than normal market rate sizes for the units, and typically try to make the ceilings higher so it feels really spacious when you walk into a building. In the building, there'll be stacked units, and we plan to have an interior stair entry that's secured access. So if it's raining, wet, cold, all of the temperature changes throughout the year, everyone's protected internally. You don't have to walk outside to wash your clothes. There'll also be laundry located in the 3-bedroom units for larger families.
Mm-hmm. With washer and dryer.
Yep, with washer and dryer. And there'll be walking paths between the units and along Highway 1. It's setback, there's greenery, then there's a setback where there'll be a nice walking path to the park and north along 101. And I can show that in the next slide.
This is the community building. So we were thinking, okay, maybe we should put, let's see what maxing out this site would do. Let's get as many units as possible in there. And so we were like, well, let's put units on top of the community building. And the feedback that we've gotten so far is, along Holiday, it's more single family residence, low density, low height. And we just don't think that that is a good, vibe for that area. So what we are proposing to do is the community building just as a single story with this really cool shed roof that gets that natural light that comes in. I think it'll be really special. The nice thing about these community spaces, they're not just there to support the residents of the residential community. They can also be used to rent out by, Rotary or different like public meetings to be held there, which I think is an amenity to the greater city and neighborhood. So it's something that is a public space. It serves, we say for low-income housing tax credits, this is always the line I have to put at the end is, first and foremost, it serves the residents of the community because that's how you get into a basis and get equity for it. But it's also there for the greater good of the community to use. So I made my public service announcement there. Okay. So these are precedents. So when you are first in concept, kind of figure out what you're trying to design to, we come up with these different like aspirational elements. So our architect gathered these things and, to me, what I was trying to get to is a very natural but contemporary design. So we won't be using this wood type of shingle. What we will be using is a fiber cement shingle. So it has the greater durability, but it has a faux wood look and it'll be, I think, light gray with the white trim, which is a very kind of, coastal quintessential look, but it will wear well. So this is along the highway on Roosevelt here. We also want to do commissioning an artist, a local artist. I don't know, do you guys know Alyssa Burke? Do you know her? Yeah, so I went to school with her and she's a local artist. And so she's agreed to come in and do these mural panels, which will be 4 panels. And we kind of staggered these buildings because the road is kind of curving and we wanted to work with that curve. But we also wanted, this is the entrance into Seaside from the north. We also wanted it to be an experience as you're coming in to get some type of art component that's really coastal and talking about, I don't know if it's going to be a historical, it may be a historical, but also with just our environmental, I just love all the things that we can choose from here. So we're going to be working on that. That'll probably be a community engagement process where we go and put stickers up to say good, better, best, and kind of to derive where we're going. This is in the central courtyard. It's parked over a 1-to-1. I think I'm looking back at Jeff. It's over a 1-to-1. I think it's almost a 1.25 that we're trying to hit to serve these units. So it's fairly well parked. I feel like, parking is always the thing that drives the development, and we're trying to meet that thoughtfully. This is a little respite barbecue area that keeps people out of the rain, but in the summer, drier months that people could come out and barbecue and hang out. Just a little something, again, note that we tried to really, there has not obviously, well, not obvious, but I think most people know a lot of affordable housing that has went in the Seaside area for a long, long time. So we want to be able to maximize on this opportunity. Land is finite. These opportunities are finite. But it has to be balanced with amenity space. It has to be balanced with parking. So it's that, and the heights and the zoning. The nice thing is that we have this beautiful park next door. So, when you see this, typically we would have a bigger green space, but you have to think about the context of next door as there is a lot of green space. So we're trying to really maximize what we can do for the residents here in the future. Okay. So renderings, that's kind of like what the community building will look like. Okay. A little more snazzy renderings, keep going. Top lot. You can just, go right out from the after school space in that community building and to be able to go outside and have this taught. I will work for funding for covering it because I know it will be used more if it's covered. You want to talk about after-school program? Okay.
So we have great partners that are planning to work with us on this project. The first is Art Room, who will provide an after-school program for the children of the project. And they have been working, I believe, in Seaside in some schools with libraries and in Astoria along the coast for a number of years. They'll be providing after-school programs, sort of tutoring, workshops for the kids, as it states, monthly special events. And a lot of the instructors are trained, their backgrounds in teaching, which is pretty great.
And, the reason I really wanted like Art Room there is, like I said, for me, art was a really important connector growing up on the coast. With cuts to schools over the last decade, seen less and less arts programs. I feel like it's a real loss for our community. A lot of kids really thrive in art. And so we wanted to provide that. We think that that will be a good fit, but it's also homework, helping them assess like support with homework and also other needs. So it's a small component of our resident services. It's just the after school program. Do you want to go to the next?
Yep, and I was
Yeah,
gonna
talk-
note.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to how Steph is saying that a lot of the after-school programming, especially art, is really good for not only the children, but a lot of parents we've noticed, for instance, at our Cathedral Village project where we have Vibe, they also will come, especially the elders, will come and join in with the kids to learn how to play instruments, or they're doing stop motion videos with their iPads, or they're making beats and making CDs to share with their family. And a lot of the family members who are older are also joining in on it. And it's free to everyone in the building, which has been really great at connecting them and making them feel more at home and as a community on site, which has been great to see.
And also for workforce housing, critical program is after school care, because you can't pull the job down if your kid gets out at 3 and you get out at 6. So this is a way to bridge that and make it easier, because a lot of the times in low income housing, transportation is a barrier. So keeping the kiddos busy after school is critical to making sure that you have, less problems, less challenges, we'll say.
Especially over the summer, a lot of Vibe and Art Room would also be participating in an after-school summer program, or like a summer program, because kids aren't in school. So that really helps out parents as well.
Yeah, and it's not to say that these kids won't participate in Sunset Parks and Rec. It's just another option, another opportunity. And we will be partnering further with other community-based organizations and programs to connect the dots there to make sure that we have good synergy and that, we're covering the right things.
Our other partners are Clatsop Community Action and Centro Cultural. So Clatsop Community Action currently works in Seaside and locally on site at the hospital to help provide sort of navigation services to individuals, help them connect them with SNAP benefits, access to healthcare, sort of the plethora of just services that there may be barriers to. So we felt that it would be great to have them on site to also help individuals living there and the greater community as another space that they can utilize in supporting residents throughout Seaside.
And this was all kind of came about through speaking with Jason Boyd at the high school. I think he's vice principal. I remember him when he went to high school, but which was weird to have that conversation. But he really said like Viviana and Clatsop Community Action were the go-to. And they're not only just helping low-income families, but they're also helping with like new teachers to help them find housing. That's how critical housing. I don't have to tell you, I'm sure you're all very aware of the situation, but you may not be aware that they're actually a big part of assisting with like house placements for teachers. And we met Viviana and we were like, okay, she's fantastic and just really has her ear to the ground. So we think we picked we think we got a winner there. And then Centro Cultural, actually Daniela sits on the board. You want to talk about Centro?
Yeah, Centro's great. They are the oldest culturally specific nonprofit in Washington County serving Latino, Latinx, Hispanic population. And they continue to grow and expand their services throughout not only Portland, but Southern Oregon. They have worked with Consejo Español, who's located in Astoria, and a majority of their staff is bilingual. In looking at statistics along the coast, there's a lot more bilingual individuals who are moving to the coast or who are living on the coast that could use additional support. Centro provides a number of services from housing to some of the overlap services with Clatsop County, but also are able to translate documentation. So if there's some sort of barriers to accessing care or getting to schools or explaining a document, Central's really great at connecting the dots and helping work across the board with other organizations as well. They've also been helpful in assisting a number of new immigrants, arrivals to Oregon who have just arrived on the bus in the middle of winter. And they house them, get clothes, do food drives, and put them up in their temporary housing in order to assist them with finding permanent housing, which has been really great.
With Centro, we partnered with them on multiple projects and we've had a lot of success. They're wonderful partners. They do what they say they're going to do. They really show up. They're very interested in coming to the coast. It's not going to be a big initiative, but it's smaller because Clatsop Community Action is really our first point of contact. But we think that this is a nice supplement to be able to bring additional services to the region. Next slide. Okay, so more beautiful pictures, landscape buffer. We really listened to the city of Seaside and kind of some of their directives of how they wanted the streetscape to interact with the building and, you know, not big fences and keep it walled off, to have pathways that connect the sidewalk going all the way down. You know, obviously being thoughtful about the lighting that's so, you know, quintessential Seaside, you know, and things like that. Keep going. So just, you know, beginning concepts. This is an aerial of what the massing would look like and how it would feel. These are just precedents for landscaping, some of the things that are inspirational. Different, you know, this is beginning work of what kind of plantings. So, you know, one thing, when we talk about workforce housing, one of the things for this Seaside housing that we're planning on doing is what's called a preference. And you can do this within fair housing. You have to be very thoughtful about it. You have to use the right attorneys, but it is done. And so what we'd like to do is put a preference for Seaside employees, schools, you know, Seaside School District employees, Seaside employees, and to give them a preference for this housing, to make sure that we are housing folks that are in need. We are understanding of the critical need of housing for the city of Cannon Beach as well. So that's why we're here today, to share this about, you know, with you. We understand that, you know, from what we have researched, about 75 employees or 5.5% of the total Cannon Beach workforce live and work in Cannon Beach. So a very small percentage of your workforce is being housed here. And they're really coming from a really long distance too, which is very interesting and challenging with the winter months. And how do you get here when things are iced up? You know, the pass is scary. So, you know, we would love to explore opportunities, how to partner with the city of Cannon Beach in the future for this particular Seaside project community. So it's something that, you know, we wanted to come and present, just to give you a heads up of the housing opportunity that's coming. Go to the next slide, please. This is a schedule of where we're at. I don't know if it can be increased, but where we are at is, see the blue box? That's where we are right now, which is called schematic design. So we've done our concept and now we have engaged our engineers. We have a general contractor working with Essex Construction, and we're working with Ingram Moyson as our architect. We have our civil and, you know, all of our consultants on. And so we are really working in earnest right now. We've done our due diligence with, you know, doing environmental and geotech and survey and all the initial stuff. We've had our first, what I call a dirt hoedown or dirt charrette, where we all get together and talk about, you know, because that's where the risk is in a lot of these deals of like how to mitigate the risk there. Getting further into design and getting more details. The funding round is going to be coming up in February, and which will be going after the 4% tax credits and state lift subsidy. We're also working on getting some money from Care Oregon, a brownfield grant from Biz Oregon. So we are always, you know, these things, it takes a village, lots of different funding to be able to make a complete capital stack to build these. We imagine if we're successful in this first quarter round, then we would, which I think this is a very strong project. I believe that we will be funded. I can't promise. We're going to try really hard. But then we would break ground towards the end of 2025, November 2025, October, November 2025. So we are very diligent. You know, once we get the funding and things like that, we really put the gas pedal down and get moving. And we're in this particular deal, we're trying to move right now to get ready for the funding round to be completely buttoned up. So getting through schematic design, having all of our due diligence done, really just ticking and tying all the stuff to put in a complete package. Because as I mentioned, this is a competitive, so we're competing against all of the Western region. It's a very large region, all of the projects that are going in. So that's a really important factor. It's not a slam dunk just because, you know, we have good community, you know, which I think we do. Everybody in the city of Seaside has been fantastically supportive. With that, I will be quiet and answer any questions you have.
Okay. The first question I have is just because I just want to get the nomenclature right, because we've been told that affordable housing is 1%, one specific percentage of AMI, and that workforce housing was another specific percentage, and middle housing was another. So now I'm so confused.
Yeah. Let me help.
Where are we?
Let me help.
Okay.
So that's why I was saying I want to be really careful with workforce because it's used in a lot of different contexts. So the way I'm using it is in an affordable housing context. Workforce housing, affordable housing. So that's going to be 60% area median income and less. We may do blended income where we have some 80%. That means it would be offset by 30s and 40s. So on a blended basis, you're at 60%. Okay. But predominantly, we're talking about 60% AMI, and who that person is. They're usually like dental tech, medical tech, new teachers, service industry folks, cashiers at everything, Safeway, you name it.
Some city workers.
So they're usually, I mean, they have to have an income to meet that rent. Now, it's not to say that they might qualify for a 40% unit or something, but be able to pay up to the 60% rent. But they can't be over income. Can't be at 70% AMI and pay the 60% rent. So there is a threshold there.
And that's a threshold that you get the subsidy is based from HUD.
Yeah, so HUD goes every year and does like a census and says, here's what the average median income is, and does an equation and says, here's the maximum allowable rent you can charge for this 3-bedroom unit, 2-bedroom unit, 1-bedroom unit. When we talk about middle income housing, you can say that for workforce as well, because they're still working folks, right? That is usually 80% to 120%. So I don't want to go too dark down this path, but I'm working on middle income as well. So we are actively working on it. There aren't as many middle income housing projects, you might notice, because imagine you're constraining your income and there is no subsidies there for it. Even if you give the dirt, it doesn't make up for it because the incremental difference in rent between a 60% unit and an 80% unit is negligible. But on the 60%, I've got all the subsidy, right? I've got 25% for my LIHTC equity, and I've got it probably another 50% in subsidy, straight like a soft debt from a state or a county or like Metro. So you're talking about giving up 70% of your capital stack to get a 20% increment increase in your income. That's why they don't get built. They just don't work. Right. Even giving property tax exemption to the middle income, donating land, donating system development charges, meaning waiving them, it still doesn't make the deal work.
Okay.
So that's why, you know, our federal government needs to get involved, in my opinion, and do more with middle income housing tax credit. Does not exist. I know. Believe me, we can all dream, but they're just hard deals to get done. I do like the integrated income approach where you can take some 80s and offset with 30 because you're hitting a wider span. The problem is at the state, they have the only subsidy for any deals that are outside of the metro area is LIFT funding. And LIFT funding is very prescriptive. It's very onerous funding too. But it says that you can only serve 60% units. So you might be able to get tax credit equity on those 80%, but you won't get LIFT subsidy. And LIFT subsidy is about $200,000 a door. You're putting for each unit, I'm giving away 200,000 if I charge 80% rent. So I'm trying to educate you along with this as you're thinking about your housing needs and initiatives to like bear in mind that the reason why things are funded and structured the way they are, it's really a function of the funding. Funding dictates everything I do. It dictates who I serve, where I serve, how I serve. It's everything. So that's why you see certain types of housing get built and others not.
And it all pencils out. I mean, it must be expensive to build these.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
But it all pencils out. I mean, keeping the rents low and the only way that it does pencil out, obviously, is from the subsidies and the funding that you get.
Yeah, the only way you can do low income housing is with subsidy and tax credits that I know of, unless there's private donors. And that is a game that I would love to get into, but there is not a lot of that going on. But I have a lot of hope for that in the future. I think that is going to be, people are going to start looking at private funds more for affordable housing is my guess down the road. But yeah, in order to do affordable housing, this is a great program. The Section 42 program has been around for like 30 years. It's an incentive-based program, so it takes a developer like myself and says, if you do these things and do these restrictive rents, we will give you this money. Different to that, prior to that was public housing, right? And there's still housing authorities that's doing public housing, but they're not funded really. So they're also using these programs.
Why did you choose to be a private public instead of a nonprofit?
Great questions. I've worked in both. Even prior to working at the nonprofit, I had worked at a for-profit in the Bay Area in California. So I grew up in Seaside. I went to school down in the Bay Area. I stayed there and I worked in affordable housing. Well, I worked in banking, then I went into affordable housing. Nonprofits. They're not all equal. They all operate differently. Some are very sophisticated, some are not. Many are, maybe not. That's probably not good to say. They have a board, and that board is comprised of a host of different backgrounds that may not all be real estate centric or understand real estate and the dynamics of decision making. Development is very dynamic. We need decision makers. We need people that can move and that aren't afraid of risk. It's still risky. Just because it's affordable housing does not mean it actually has more risk, you know, in one sense. I deal with all of the same limitations that a market rate developer does, right? Permitting, zoning, all the stuff. Then I add all this tax stuff, you know, and I add all this compliance and all this rigmarole. So it's quite complex. And not all boards really can get behind it. And so what I was finding in my former life is a real desire for myself to do more and to do bigger scale, do things across the balance of the state. And it was really regionally focused, and it was focused on really one population. And I felt like that wasn't a good fit for me. The thing about market rate, not market rate, but a for-profit developer, the setup that I have is I can go, I can partner with a lot of different folks. I can do all different types of projects. I can regionally go places. They really just talk real estate. This is what we do all day long. And I don't have a bunch of people to go through to talk people into it. I have one lady, Anne, you saw, and she's been doing it for 30 years and she's lovely and supportive. And I can, boom, done. She gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. But I do love nonprofits. We partner with them in every deal. So, yeah.
as I understand it, there is hanging in the air, kind of a request for funding from Cannon Beach. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, so kind of going back to what Lisa had said, it all pencils. We have a small gap. So having that additional funding will make us whole. And that's going to be critical in putting our funding application to be looked at as a bona fide deal. So we're kind of trying to get the last bits together. Also, we don't have any pre-development funding. So all those projects that I showed you, typically they come with pre-development funding. We're awarded a site and there's some money. So I'm doing 500 units in Milwaukee. The city of Milwaukee gave us like $1.7 million to do pre-dev. Each deal, this is a smaller deal, 69 units, but I would imagine, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's probably about 1.2 million to 1.3 million in pre-development costs. Until we close on the construction loan, which is permits are issued, all the financing is placed, the stars have aligned, and you close your deal and you can break ground. So until then, I don't have any funding. It's just related out of pocket. And although we are big, I still have certain constraints with that. They're not going to just say free checkbook staff go anywhere and just keep spending like a drunk sailor. Every single deal why they are very good in such a large organization is they watch every dollar. They watch how I spend, what I spend, and they want to make sure that I can execute. So being able to partner with public entities to assist in pre-dev, because we're not asking for a bunch of, all of it, we pay. So imagine I have like 6 projects going. I have probably, $10 million of pre-dev that I'm spending personally. So we try to offset some of that exposure of getting public partnership. So what's in it for Cannon Beach, from my opinion, is we would like to, if you are able to invest in this, we would say, let's open up the preference to city of Cannon Beach employees and say they get a preference too. And it's just a point system.
So how much are you hoping that we could contribute to this?
500.
500
would be great.
And what kind, would we have a memorandum of understanding or some kind of an agreement? And
yeah, I mean, what I would share with you, a couple ways to do it. With we'd like the proceeds to stay in because that also helps our capital set. So sometimes you can put that money in and at closing you get that money reimbursed back. So that's plan B, we'll say. And that is what we do with Portland Housing Bureau. The Portland Housing Bureau will give me $1 million in pre-dev, no matter what the size of the deal. They just give you $1 million and it's a note and, an agreement, a loan agreement, and there's like 3 small documents and we can share that. Like that's a boilerplate. We took it to Milwaukee and they used it. It's kind of a good gold star standard doc. And it's really to the point and simple. So City of Milwaukee used those docs and adjusted a little bit to where the money stays into the deal. So it helps.
does that mean you would pay us back then?
Well, plan B would be to pay you back. Plan A, the desire would be the money stays in the deal, meaning the money goes towards the project permanent source.
And what would we get if we did plan A? What would we get for that?
Preference for City of Cannon Beach employees into the housing.
So when you're saying City of Cannon Beach employees, are you talking about employees who work for the city or people who work in the city that need?
Let's talk. I'm open-minded.
That's,
Yeah.
and how, I guess you would have to have a certain percentage of the units would be occupied by people from Cannon Beach.
Talk. Yeah. I mean, I think those are the kind of the devils in the details of like, what does $500,000 buy you, right? Considering that the city of Seaside is put in land, they're doing property tax exemption, they're putting, a lot of eggs in that basket. It might not be to the same magnitude of what the city of Seaside's going to get, but Seaside, Cannon Beach work very closely. I mean, I think all the kids go to the same school. Like, I know this is a very tight-knit community, even though we have different city names. So it's about striking the right balance and making sure that everybody's feeling like it's a good deal.
And how does that, I know, we've had discussions about affordable housing and so forth. for years here in Cannon Beach. And one of the things that I keep going back and forth on is housing discrimination.
Fair housing? Yeah,
Yeah.
great question.
And if you had a certain percentage of housing that was devoted to Cannon Beach Cannon Beach people, well, whoever they are, might be.
Yep.
There
I know where you're going.
thing law that would govern.
Yeah, so we work with fair housing attorneys to write it up to make sure. We also take it to Oregon Housing and Community Services, which is the tax credit agency and funder, to make sure that they approve it as well. So we tick and tie all of that. But quintessentially, what happens is the reason it meets the fair housing kind of like laws is because you're not going to a certain population that is based on gender, race, or religion, right? Because also with fair employment standards that you all have to work within says that you can't do that as well. So by using that population, I'm throwing a big net. It's not saying only women, only children, it's not saying that. It's saying employees, and employees is a big base, right? It's a diverse population. I'm not singling out.
Except you're singling out in terms of
Region. You can
Cannon.
do region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess that agreement would have to determine how, if a Cannon Beach person decides they're not working in Cannon Beach anymore, or they aren't meeting the applicable
We're not gonna evict.
requirements,
Yeah.
then how do you escort them out?
No, you can't evict. So it's based on when they are first executing the lease, and they do, like I said, the income verification, background check. There'll be an employment, they're gonna have to bring a pay stub that shows that they're getting, recently employed in Cannon Beach as a city employee or as a server in Cannon Beach or Seaside or wherever, right? But they lose their job and they end up finding another job in Astoria. You can't evict somebody out for that. It's not legal.
So how do you keep that percentage of Cannon Beach
Well,
people?
what happens is you're going to, when the unit comes open, so if they move away, then it's basically a wait list and it's based on the priority, right? So how they score.
So, but meanwhile, your percentage might continue to go down.
Yeah.
That's something you really have to work out.
There's nothing you can do about that, though. So that's not going to be something that you can evict for, nor would we want to, because that's not how we operate. So it's really best efforts.
You can't define that when a person from Cannon Beach leaves for whatever reason, they're not going to be guaranteed to be replaced by Cannon Beach.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to get into some details of how that's going to work. Like, we'll have to gameplay it out, right? But it is done. It is done often, and I think we can successfully do it. But I do want to make sure that we know that, like, if somebody ends up changing jobs, losing their jobs, they're not kicked out of their housing. That you would not do that. So, nor would the state or anyone let you do that, but we wouldn't do it even if you could.
So Clay has a question. His computer is acting up. He'd like to know if there's a minimum size project they will do in terms of number of units and or site size.
Oh, okay. So not talking about maybe Seaside, but like, what's our range of what we do? Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. I'm going to interpret it. Maybe I could answer it 4 different ways, but I think that's what they're asking. We will do as small as 40 units. We will do as large as 500 units. Where I get more specific on why I would approach a site versus not is I really have to feel that we're going to add value. So it might be a function of, oh, it's only 40 units, but I know it's a really complex deal and I know we're the best person for the job. We're going to do a really good job. Maybe it's complexity because it's a neighborhood that is up in arms about housing and I have to bring my background and calmness and to talk to them about community engagement and bringing them into the fold. Maybe it's a really financially complex deal that's going to require new market tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, this source, that source, and we have the acumen financially to be able to do it. Or maybe it's a really large scale project and we have the financial capacity and we're really good at infrastructure and we'll do it. there's not certain deals, I just say pass. We're just not a fit. We're not the right one. It should be a community-based organization, or it should be this. I felt for Seaside that we were an excellent fit because I grew up here. I have a real passion for the coast. My mom lives 2 blocks away from the site, so I would like to be, developing what's next to her home. And this is a bucket list thing for me. So there has to be a reason. There's only so many deals I can do of why I develop a certain.
Michelle has her hand.
Right, Michelle? You have a question?
Hi. I would completely understand helping Seaside fund this if we had a plan in place of our own. I just don't agree with doing this until we have our own plan in Cannon Beach. I'd also say that if we actually did do this, we would be putting a lot more of employees and workforce in outside the voting area and giving the landowners even more. I mean, I guess they have most of the voting power anyhow. So having so many of our actual residents that are spend most of their time here living outside of the voting area is really uneven. And I think we need to have our own plan before we start helping Seaside. I mean, love Seaside, love it to death, but I just say this is upsetting.
I would just say, I totally hear you. Housing needs are a crisis across Oregon. The largest percentage per capita of homeless families is in the state of Oregon. It's very disappointing, right? I don't want to be known for that. I get from a city perspective that thought. I also get that there is a unique opportunity to help Cannon Beach employees.
But then we're giving all of the voting rights away to just property owners. And I mean, I know there's definitely property owners that don't even spend nearly as much time as city workers, people that work in hotels and restaurants that have no voice. And I think we need to come up with our own plan. And I'd love to be part of helping Seaside, but not right now.
It's funny because I see exactly the opposite. I see that the opportunity for housing for Cannon Beach employees, this is an opportunity that is actually going to happen. It sounds to me like it's actually going to happen, and we have to do a lot of dealing to make sure we get what we want for the amount of money we give. But I think the idea of having more Cannon Beach people housed is.
But then they're not Cannon Beach people.
It trumps political considerations. I mean, you're talking politics. I think that it's more important that people have a place to live.
And have a voice.
I think it trumps political considerations. That's just my opinion.
I disagree.
Well, we agree to disagree.
That's great. We do that.
Can you expand on the housing preference plan and when that's all going to come together and how much 500,000 buys us and what that process looks like?
Yeah, I think that today's intent for today and the spirit of today was to inform you about what we're doing in the city of Seaside and how the city of Seaside is creating affordable housing and that there is an opportunity to partner with the city of Cannon Beach. Do I know all of the intricacies yet? No. And I would love to sit down with you and the city of Seaside and talk it out because I don't want to speak out of turn because I think what needs to happen is working with the city of Seaside and what they have in mind as well. But I will say that what we would do is look at what feels equitable and fair and what incentivizes you to participate, but also keeps the city of Seaside feeling that they have a a seat at the table, a large seat at the state table. They put a lot of into this. So, you know, I don't mean to be without detail, but I hesitate to like make big promises. I'm kind of a under promise, over deliver type. So I would rather understand that if the spirit's there, let's sit down and convene. Let me come back to you with like, here's what we've discussed. Here's what the capital stack looks like. Here's what a per unit is. Really give you data and numbers to give you a sense. But you know, I don't want to speak out of turn. So.
I think the work out deal with Seaside yet.
No, but I mean, they are here and they are supportive of this and interested in this collaboration. So I can't say that, but I think we just have to look at the numbers and we weren't really sure how this was going to be received, honestly. And before we get too far down the road, I just want to get consensus and understand, you know, I never want to really do anything that isn't well received. It's not worth it. You know, we'll figure it out on our own. I always do. But I do see a real opportunity. I had a lot of friends growing up in Cannon Beach, and I feel like there's just such a synergy and a connection that it makes sense. But there has to be an investment to make it worthwhile, because it will be work. This isn't going to be like the simplest thing, but I do think it is worthwhile endeavor.
Are you going to other cities and the county? Huh?
Well, we are working with the county, but we're not going to Gerhart. We're not going to, this is it. So it's you and it's Seaside.
And with the county, is the county contributing any funding or anything like that?
Brownfield, we're gonna apply to the Brownfield grant.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a Brownfield grant and, you know, Alyssa couldn't be here tonight. She's wasn't available, but she's been hugely supportive and really has kind of been kind of the grease to get things moving. And so I feel like she did a great job getting political wins in the sales for this project. She had the first lady, the governor's first lady, come and visit the site. I was there to meet them. I feel like those are really critical things. Like it's also about getting the larger community support and the political support to work at the state level to say, we really need this. So that also helps our deals get funded. So you as city council members reaching out to your local representatives to say, this is important to us. Please consider this application.
But you're not going to the county for funding for any particular?
Brownfield.
Okay, but other than that?
Yeah.
Why are we not going to Astoria or Gerhart? Or why are you, not we, sorry.
I can offer some background, just it might be helpful to, there's been actually a long discussion in the works with the housing group that has got us to this point, which Alyssa has been our kind of agent at the county for. So in May, we had the housing charrette and we looked at middle housing on sites and housing downtown and housing on the RV site. And I think everyone wondered that or thought going into the charrette that the RV site was going to be the one that got done first. So simple, you know, we could build much more housing and more affordable housing there, but it turns out it's actually a really big deal. And then, and Alyssa has been involved in this discussions around the housing policy shifts that we want to make in the code rewrite project. And this opportunity came up, and housing is a regional issue. I mean, it has to, that's really Alyssa's kind of main job, is to figure out how to solve the housing crisis at the regional scale and how all the cities can support each other in doing that. So the opportunity to maybe the RV site is way out there, but here's a site that could be more immediate. And you could actually check a box and say, we've provided some housing within the first couple of years of our house effort at trying to reform our housing approach.
And when I'm really impressed by everything you spoke about, but the whole time I was thinking to myself, well, preference for Seaside, what does that get? But then when you said that we could work out some kind of an arrangement in exchange for any kind of funding for preference for Cannon Beach, then I just started shifting my perception.
It's also dramatic, those numbers that you showed. I have 75 people, 75 of the total 366 people who work here. Only 75 can live here.
That's 5%.
That's
Yeah, I think we already rely on Seaside for a large part of our workforce housing.
Yeah, and, you know, and Astoria has, you know, they have not a ton of projects, but they have a number of affordable projects going on. Same with Warrenton. Gerhart, you know, that's a whole nother, you know, thing, but, you know, I feel like there's an opportunity. So that's why I'm here.
And that's why you haven't gone to Astoria is really because Alyssa I think Alyssa brought us together.
Yeah.
I may be wrong about this, but she's the one who suggested to me that we bring this discussion to the housing group.
Yeah.
Months ago, and now we finally have you here.
Yes.
That's how slow.
Steve? Hi.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good discussion here. I think gap is going to be critical. You're going to need to prove to us that you need dollars and how much. $500,000. We don't have $500,000 in our affordable housing fund. So it's not going to be 500,000 unless we want to take it from somewhere else. I think it's critical that we work out exactly what is going to be done for the city of Cannon Beach. And without that, from a staff perspective, you certainly wouldn't get a recommendation of approval until we know that information. So I look forward to having those conversations, but I wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Are there other people online or in here that would like to make comments?
I think just for context too, the entire project is like over $30 million. So I want to, you know, 500,000, although I know it is a lot of money for the city of Cannon Beach and many coastal communities. Just to give context of what we're talking about, the capital stack, it is, you know, a very small percentage, a needed percentage, because you're not whole if you don't have it, right? But context is this is, you know, they cost a lot to build. It's hard to believe, but.
We really do encourage you to come to Portland and see any of our projects. They're great. You
Yeah.
would like, they look like market rate. You
Yeah.
would never know they're affordable projects.
Yeah.
Standards are high.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about Related why I felt very good about joining that organization is that the reputation is really, really strong. So the design, the operations, you walk onto the property, they're clean. You walk onto the property, they're well maintained. Design is very commensurate to the neighborhood. So it will be a lovely community for the residents. Whoever ends up living there, you know, it's not to say that we would preclude Cannon Beach residents. We're just saying, you know, there's an opportunity for a preference and we'd love to partner with you all.
Chet, you have your hand up?
Chet does, yeah.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this presentation. I think it's a fantastic development. I'm really excited to see it come to fruition. Definitely something that community needs desperately. I think the question of whether Cannon Beach should devote their small affordable housing fund to support this is something we all need to think really carefully about, and happy to engage in more conversations. And I think the details, as Steve and everyone has mentioned, is really important. I also just want to point out to the council that as we've heard today, there are significant subsidies for 60% and below AMI. These projects can't happen without them. There are no subsidies for 80% and above. And I think that's something to keep in mind keenly when we think about this small housing budget that we have. If we're going to do pre-development on the RV park or any other site in town, we need that kind of money because there's nothing available at the state. There's nothing available at the federal level. So just something to bear in mind as we consider supporting this important project.
Thank you. Well, I think we should continue the discussion. And just, you know, work with the city, work with you, work with Seaside.
Yeah.
And continue it. If anyone has any strong objections, speak now or forever. Everybody okay with that? And Michelle, we will keep in mind your comments also.
Will the discussions be in public?
No,
They won't be in public?
well,
I mean, I,
Decisions would be.
the decisions of course will be,
right.
but I think that there's probably, you know, a smaller group to discuss and look at the numbers and see if it makes sense. If it's something that makes sense, then it would be a public presentation again.
Okay,
right?
I'd like to be invited to those meetings. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, well, I really appreciate your time so much, and it was, you know, a good opportunity. I know that, you know, these are tough topics, and there's finite resources, and there's a lot of need out there, and it's critically important to work together. And, you know, we've worked a lot on a lot of private-public partnerships, and just appreciate the opportunity. And if this doesn't come to fruition for this particular property, we're always open to other discussions. And just, you know, it's okay. So whatever comes of it, just thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks for this.
Was she done? Was she? Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to excuse the Design Review and Planning Commission. Thank you for attending. Thanks, Jeff, for coming.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding yard debris burning and recreational burning.
Sorry.
And
Yeah, we have John and the fire chief here for this. But council began the discussion of burning yard debris and recreational burning at the November 12th work session. This is a continuation of the discussion. Per council's request, Cannon Beach Fire Fire Marshal John Jerome be available for questions, and also Chief Reckman is here.
you guys want to come up? Please. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
So this is still in the discussion stage, and does anyone have questions? Specific questions?
Yes, I wonder from the two of you, whether you see areas in our municipal code that you feel strongly about, regarding burning, strengthen or.
I mean, yeah, your municipal code is what's gonna dictate it. And I know very little about it, just kind of heard a little bit. As far as backyard burning, I mean, several communities are fighting the same thing with backyard, not recreational, but yard debris burning. So if you were looking at banning yard debris burning, I mean, that's a municipal code thing. We deal with it very little. I mean, our dealing with it has been very minor over the years. It going to code enforcement. It's not necessarily a fire code thing. We end up going out to put it out when somebody's complaining about it. And it's usually burning wet leaves. It's a nuisance. It's not a hazard per se. But you have the recycle center down there. So the backyard burning, debris burning, banning it doesn't bug me so much. I don't know that's a bad idea. I'm not gonna sit here and say, yeah, you should or you shouldn't. I don't know it's a bad. I will, for John, I talked about quite a bit. I think banning recreational fires is a really bad idea. And the reason I say that is we can control the recreational backyard fires. We can permit them. We can put in municipal code to follow fire code, that they have to have permit, that once you ban them in the backyard, they're all going to go to the beach. They're all going to go to the estuary. We deal with enough down there. So my opinion is banning recreational fires backyard recreational fires is a really bad idea because all you're gonna do is push them into the areas we can't control. And then we're gonna spend more time we already do chasing them in the estuary, chasing them in the dune grass.
We actually think it might make
I think
town less safe.
yes.
It'll create a much greater call volume. And unfortunately, it may take us away from things that would be more important for us to be attending to instead of, and yes, we can go to those other incidents, but there's always a delay. So we're trying to use our time, our resources, and our abilities the best we can to serve the community.
Do you think recreational fires should have require a burn permit?
That's kind of up to what you guys do. I mean, a lot of departments or a lot of agencies, so if you get outside the city limits, ODF requires a permit. They require an inspection and a permit. And you could do the same thing. That isn't uncommon in municipalities to do that. There is a fire code about recreational fires and how far away from everything they have to be. And you can make that your thing. Again, we have not had issues with it. There's not an overabundance of problems with it. So.
Well, not an overabundance, but there are some people who say that they have trouble breathing at night because of them, because of the fire pits in their neighbor's yard. So if you have the health and well-being of people in a neighborhood balanced against the right to have a fire pit in your yard, I have a little bit of a problem with the idea that we should put the recreational desire to have a recreational fire over and above people's health and well-being. I just don't see that. To me, that's not an even call at all. And, I don't know. I don't actually, I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to, I'm not an expert on fires, obviously, but I just don't know for a fact that I really see that banning recreational fire pits is going to make more work for you. I'm sorry. I just don't.
I would disagree.
That is not, well, I know, yeah, because that's what you said, but I'm just saying, I don't see the correlation there. I mean, a few more people might have fires on the beach, but I think people who want to have fires on the beach are going to have them on the beach.
I think you ban them, and again, it's our opinion. We'll see, but I think you ban them, especially the vacation rentals. They want to have fire. They want to have the time around their fire. They come down here, they're on vacation. And I think you do that, and they're going to find some place to do it. And it's going to be down in the estuary. It's going to be in the dune grass. We're seeing more the Chapman Point, the Point area. We're doing more of them out on Breakers Point than we ever have. Are hiking out that, and I think that's exactly what's going to do. It's going to push more of them out there.
Well, I mean, I'm still considering people's health and well-being too, and breathing in the fires. They just had a new study come out saying that breathing in wood burning fires increases your chance of Alzheimer's by almost double. That was a recent medical,
Smoke is very bad. In fact, we try to stay over as much as we can, and we have equipment to get away from that.
Right.
But if we're putting more folks with fires on the beach, we consistently have onshore winds, you're going to have all that smoke's going to come back. So for the folks that are closer to the beach, they're going to have a worse effect of that because they're going to have all those fires on the beach now blowing onshore.
I would wonder, and we haven't received the complaints, so I have no, but the complaints about the backyard, the recreational, what are they burning? Are they burning wet wood? Are they burning what are they actually burning?
I think they're burning the wood that they buy from the store with the plastic wrap thing around it. That's
a whole nother matter.
Yeah.
Hopefully removing the plastic wrap.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Are they removing the plastic wrap or are they just throwing the whole?
Yeah, they're removing it and dropping it on the ground or on the beach, but because I pick it up all the time. But anyway, I don't know, when someone says that this is wrecking they live here, and they have to keep their windows closed in the summer. I just think that's so unfair. I mean, it really, it just, and I know that there are a lot of other people who probably have problems with the smoke from the fire pits, but they don't report it. Because people generally, if something's really bugging them, they don't make a complaint unless they're a person who is used to doing that or doesn't mind doing that or doesn't mind ratting out their neighbors or et cetera, et cetera. That's the only kind of person who is usually makes those complaints, or if it's so bad, they can't stand it anymore. So I think that it's probably a nuisance for a lot of people, but what are they going to do? Are they going to, file take them to court for a nuisance violation? I mean,
Don't know.
Yeah.
who has the kind of money to do that?
Right.
So
Do you ever answer calls for household waste fires? For some reason,
Rarely. I mean, since I've been here since 17, I can count on one hand the amount of time we have. Very rarely have we ever
for some
done.
reason we can give them permission to do that. It just seems nowadays odd, especially since we have the recycling depot and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's a very easy thing
Yeah.
to get.
I would agree. And DEQ doesn't allow it. It's actually against DEQ rules to burn. The only thing you can burn is natural material. So, and outside the city, anytime we go on that, we refer it to DEQ because we don't have the authority to do anything about it. So it gets referred to DEQ.
So if you had a house in Arch Cape, because it's not in the city limits, you would need a permit from ODF for
a fire pit, yeah.
For a fire pit.
Yep. Yeah, anything that's outside city limits, it's an ODF protected area. You have to have a permit for a fire pit.
And if we had a permit system in Cannon Beach with the fire department?
Well, that'd be, so if you want to do it and us to do it, there'd have to be an intergovernmental agreement giving us the authority to do it because we don't have the authority as a district, the city does. So there'd have to be an intergovernmental agreement giving us the authority to do it. I know Chief and I have talked about that before Jason Skorhorn and I talked about it, and I wasn't willing to do it because we didn't have the staff to do it. Now we have staff and we could do that shows what we want to do, but there'd have to be language through your attorney as to give authority, because right now we don't have that authority.
And is there a mechanism with a permit? If someone has to get a permit for recreational burning or a recreational fire pit, is there a mechanism for their neighbors to object? Or out against them getting a permit?
That would be your municipal code that you'd have to create that municipal code. Right now, there isn't.
Right into because when the renters or the short-term renters have their pit, it blows right into somebody's house. So we'd have to have a mechanism for them to make file an objection to it. And then consider it, whether or not they get a permit. Most of them probably wouldn't be objected to.
Right.
But the ones that are, you'd be taking into consideration those people who are having their well-being and the use and enjoyment of their property is being severely impacted. Right.
Anybody else have a question?
Mayor, may I make some comments?
Sure, why not?
Again, Steve Wakefield, Lux 1051 Cannon Beach Road. With respect to the hypothesis about the individuals or overzealous tourists wanting to make a fire and then running down to the beach with the fire, I still think that smoke would be much more evenly dispersed than if those fires are right inside the town. As well, the embers would have to fly a lot farther to get into the dry pines or some of the other areas, land on somebody's roof. So I think for those reasons, it would be a lot safer to have them go out onto the beach. Now, not that I'm a proponent of that, I see that there are issues with burning on the beach. But I also see that in many of the areas, we have ground level water, wetland areas that are much cooler than the overlying air, which makes an inversion situation, which locks that smoke right down into the neighborhoods without a predominant breeze, which we usually have. But that predominant breeze may be slight and it blows it, from the fire pit, which isn't a higher dispersion like chimneys are, right into windows and doors and people's yards, garages, that kind of a thing. And I agree that the people who visit here, they visit here once a year, and maybe that's the only time they light a fire is once a year, but you get, thousands of people coming here once a year, and each time they come, they want to light a fire. And I think that that's what sparked this whole conversation, is that the people who live here don't necessarily want to have a fire every week. They might want to have one once a year, twice a year for some kind of a special occasion. But the overzealous nature, from my perspective, of the people who visit here is that they want to come and light a fire there once a year too, and they keep coming and there's rotation. So primarily, I think the STRs are the issue with the fires, with the amount of fires that we have, and maybe the most irresponsible fire lighters. And with respect to the fire department responding to these fires, is that for an enforcement reason, or is that to put it out or discover?
It's usually put them out because they're in a wrong spot.
Right.
And so we're going down and putting them out, digging them up. And we spend a lot of time on the beach and the estuaries and
I'm sure you do, yeah. There are a lot of people, even without this ban, that light on the beach and so forth. Yeah, each time that I've had a complaint, my neighbors have had complaints, we have called the police department for that. So it's been my experience that enforcement of 80808, which is the ordinance number, has been predicated on fire size and not the amount of smoke or noxious or toxicity. And they're concerned primarily about the safety aspects and not the health aspects when the police department responds. Because I have had the whole neighborhood filled with smoke, and because it's 3 feet by 3 feet on a recreational fire, they say, well, there's nothing we can do, except that I believe that I could convince very easily 12 reasonable people that is a nuisance, it is toxic, and it is noxious. Even if it's wood smoke. I mean, wood smoke is no less innocuous than tobacco smoke. It's the same thing, right? Leaves and bark and that kind of thing. In fact, it's probably more harmful because of the amount of secondhand smoke it has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have another question, and that's about the number of calls that you get of fires that are too close to vegetation or in driftwood piles or the illegal fires. Kind of.
I'd have to pull, but it's I guess all I can say is substantial. We're down.
Substantial, did you say?
Or we're down there during the summer. I would guess probably 4 or 5 times a week. And it goes, starting in, as soon as it's turned nice, we're down there. The estuary is a big problem. Sea Spray has done a lot of work trying to help us with that. We're doing more. The big one is Breakers Point that we've been starting to deal with a lot more. And then they get up against the bank in the wind. Away from the wind.
How do you discover them?
People are calling.
It's all through phone calls.
All through phone
Don't go through any patrol at all.
No, we don't go looking for them. The only time we're out there looking for them is 4th of July weekend. We're down there because we know there's going to be a lot.
When they call, what is the complaint? Is it smoke or is it?
No, it's a fire in that bad
Fire
spot
itself.
in the vegetation.
Brandon, do you have any questions?
From the discussion I've heard, it seems to me that the largest volume of fires is occurring, and I have no way to verify this, but through anecdotal testimonies that it's short-term rentals.
Yeah.
You know, legislatively, I'm just not seeing a way out of this other than targeting them. Do you blanket the entire community by making recreational fires illegal? I guess those are my questions and my comments at the moment.
So if we did go to a permit system and there was a avenue for objections, then some of those closely in proximity, short-term rentals or other houses would could be denied a permit.
Right, because you can have short-term rentals next door to you that don't have fire pits. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of them don't, and some of them have fire pits and they don't impact neighbors because of where the fire pit is or where the house is located. But if a house is located in a place where they're impacting their neighbors and wrecking their use of their house, I mean, I just don't see how that.
Well, it's still creating a process.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, it wouldn't.
Creating a process of a permit, notification of anybody within a certain distance. So I mean, that would be a challenging.
Be easy, no.
My question is, what are you going to permit? I'm not against it, but I think the other thing you gotta think about is what are you permitting? As far as there's all kinds of different avenues of recreational fires, from burning wood in a pit to the no smoke ones that use pellets, propane. So I think you need to be clear on what you're permitting and what type of fires.
It would be the ones that produce noxious smoke.
Okay. But I think you need to define that. How do you define that?
The other thing is too, would the visitor at the STR be the one required to get the permit? Or would the STR owner be required to get the permit for overall?
Oh, the owner.
I would
Yeah,
think it's
you couldn't have.
property management.
Can you imagine if every single week a new person from each STR came in?
Ask the question, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, if they're, I mean, I agree. I mean, it would be a nightmare. But on the other hand, if you required visitors to get their own permits, that would reduce the desire probably to have a fire.
That's true. But then the STR owner could charge twice as much because they have a.
Fire in the fire pit.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? That'd be an incentive for, yeah.
Yeah.
I think with the permit process like that, you might cause contention between neighbors though, too. If somebody says, no, I don't want you to have a fire, but somebody else is set on having a fire, then I don't want the contention between my neighbors and I if I'm opposed to it, having smoke in the neighborhood and they're not opposed to it, it could cause something like that. Well, aren't STRs have to have a business license? So can they be regulated under that type of a business that they aren't allowed to have a fire pit, or they're restricted in some way as that type of a business?
Well, right now, they're not even under the business license. They're under the land use. Yeah, but they're under, we have to make changes. They have to go through a land use process.
Right.
But, I mean, seriously, which is a big deal with the Papa hearing and everything else. So, that, yeah, I mean, I suppose any kind of violation of a city ordinance could potentially cause acrimony between neighbors. There's no way around it. I mean, you know, if your neighbor's cutting down a big tree and you report them, or if your neighbor's, you know, dumping garbage in their yard or parking, you know, 50 used Jeeps outside there in their yard. I mean, you know, it's just that's how it works. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know how you can avoid that if you have a permit system. Of course, if you just banned the recreational fires for all STRs, then you wouldn't, I guess then you wouldn't have people.
But if you banned fires for STRs and allowed them for permanent residents, isn't that discriminatory?
Well, it could be an equal protection issue. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And that might cause another problem. I don't know. I just don't know. There's something to look into for sure.
So where do we want to go?
Well, I want to keep this discussion open because I think it's really important. I cannot stand the idea that somebody is living in a neighborhood and has trouble breathing because somebody has a fire next door every single weekend of the summer. I mean, it's just not, that's not what you do for your citizens. And it's not what you do in a neighborhood, you know.
So I think we have consensus on yard debris.
I think we have consensus on yard debris and household waste.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the residential burning, so
Recreational burning.
recreational.
Right.
burning.
So I think we need, yeah, I'd sure like to get.
And maybe we can look into, do you know if Seaside has?
I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know if they have.
Be interesting to
Okay,
look at
so we'll
other
continue.
jurisdictions, yeah.
So,
This future agenda?
future, do you want it? So we have a work session January 14th. We have that slated for the tree hearing of the tree.
Yeah,
Ordinance
let's have
public hearing.
February.
So you want to go to February?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we can shoot Bill Kavaisman an email and just ask his
Oh, yeah.
opinion about, you know, maybe ban one and not the other, or just get some
Right.
information from him as well.
Yeah. that'll be fine.
Oh, I would like to hear about other communities if they've addressed this issue as well. And I would like to hear from some citizens.
And
More citizens, sorry,
I did submit several pages of a petition that speaks to these concerns, want to ban the fire pits. And Rusty has entered them into the record on the STR task force meeting.
Wait a minute, there is,
There are around 60 to 70 signatures on it.
hold on, I haven't even seen those.
I'm neither.
We haven't, we're not, I was on the task force and I never saw them.
You were on the phone at that particular meeting and dialed in,
Oh,
but they were entered into record. And I gave them to Rusty.
can we, Rusty, I mean,
I believe there are around 60 or 70 signatures. I can get as
really?
many as you want because everybody that I approached was 100% banning at least the STR recreational fires and the household waste and the
Okay.
yard.
so the
that would
first,
be good information for us.
Really? That makes a huge difference.
but we definitely need to get Bill's
Right.
opinion on whether we can do that.
And that would be good for February, the holidays, that gives time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
scheduled for February, see what other community can we get Bill Kavaisman's thoughts and what these petition that is submitted to the Georgia Rental Task Force.
Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you for coming. Thanks. Okay, next we have another discussion on gas leaf blowers. We're full of hot air tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Council began the discussion of gas leaf blowers at their November 12th work session. This is a continuation of that discussion. For council's request, a letter and email were sent to the landscapers with City of Cannon Beach business license requesting their input. And we received some correspondence from several of the companies that's in your materials. And also some information as far as definitions, et cetera.
You said we got,
I thought we only had
I
one.
only got one.
Yeah,
I only saw
we just
one.
have one.
But there was more.
Cannon Beach Landscape.
So you contacted, so all the landscapers, registered landscapers or ones who have a business license were contacted.
Yes, they were sent a letter and an email.
And we got one response that I can see.
And I also sent them a link to the packet, their email once it was.
Okay.
Well, I thought, Cannon Beach Landscapes letter had brought up some good points. Um, and, you know, some solutions of maybe limiting it to the time of day that they do it.
Or the extent of
Or
time
the
that they're allowed to do.
Right.
I mean, she said they're usually done, what, within 15 minutes or?
I was sure that Portland had banned gas leaf blowers. They've,
I thought they were in the process of doing.
yeah, I think that they're phasing them out.
Mhm.
And that, they have hundreds of landscapers there
Right.
who are finding ways to adjust to the banning of the gas leaf blowers. And I know, I mean, I know that it's, and I do, I mean, I have sympathy for the landscaping companies. It's a drag, but I mean, the reason they're being banned is because they're loud, they smell bad, they put noxious fumes into the air. I just don't see how, you know, and I mean, when I hear one blowing, it just drives me crazy. I just can't stand it here in Cannon Beach, and I hear them. You know, people have them residentially, not just landscape space. And I just, I mean, the times they are changing, you know, and certain things that we took for granted change and evolve, and new technologies develop, and you know, we figure out ways to adapt. And if people are given enough time to adapt, not just say, okay, as of tomorrow, you can't have gas leaf blowers. No, you give them a year or a year and a half to work out solutions. I just, I can't imagine that we would continue to permit them when a big city like Portland that has so much more noise than we do, and they're so much more camouflaged by the urban cacophony, you know. I just don't understand that, why we would think about, and we got one letter out of all the ones that were sent out. How many were sent out, Jennifer?
Actually, wasn't as many as you would think. I think like 7 or 8.
7 or 8 landscaping concerns in town?
Anybody who had a landscaping business license.
Okay.
I did pull up Portland's website, so they voted to phase out gas leaf blowers starting January 1st, 2026. The policy to be implemented by Multnomah County will improve public health and quality of life for landscape workers and other residents. The full ban will begin in 2028.
Okay.
So it'll be a multi-year process.
All right.
And I'll send you guys the link to this page. if you'd
That'd be
like.
great. I'd like to see that.
I think in the meantime, certainly something could be done with the length of time that they're allowed to be used. We might figure out the difference between, you know, your neighbor blowing off his walk and a hotel doing landscaping, but.
What did they do before they had leaf blowers?
Rake.
Rake.
Rake and-
Imagine that.
But home sizes have changed, landscaping, I mean, you know, those things have changed too.
Home sizes?
Home sizes.
You mean because people have estates now, so
Yeah.
they have a lot more to rake?
Yeah.
We cut down all the trees, we'd have less of a problem.
Yeah.
That's true. Not the fir trees, though.
Kidding.
Okay, so
It
we're
wouldn't
gonna,
work in our town. We mostly conifers.
right,
So-
so we are going to
Needles are fine.
look at Portland's phase in approach. We're gonna think about the time frame and.
Not just Portland. I'm curious about other,
Right, I just know that, I know the
yeah,
Portland.
I'm curious about other tourist communities or communities that have a lot, have a lot of hotels and just how they deal with it. And have trees.
So do you want to do some research on that?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it.
Okay,
I love to do it.
To be continued.
right. And then we'll also maybe get some more response from some of the landscapers about some opinions about the time it takes to
Rake.
blow. Okay,
So do you want January or February?
February, let's keep.
Should we do it at the same time as the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, anything else? Brandon, did you want to weigh in?
Just to say maybe one of the reasons that a poor response was had is that there's people that work in Cannon Beach that aren't landscapers. All they do is cut grass and move on. So I'm not exactly sure if we've reached out to the right people. I know probably 4 landscaping companies, so I'll reach out personally to them. I've reached out to one in particular.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, ready to move on? Yep. Okay, so next we have the Chamber of Commerce.
Can we take a break?
Contract discussion after a 3-minute break. Discussion item is the Chamber of Commerce contract discussion. And we have Jim Pino with us and some board members in person and some on Zoom.
A couple on Zoom. There's actually, I believe 3 board members on Zoom.
Paul
Two
Tice
board members here. Paul Tice is our treasurer.
and Eric.
And then also on Zoom is Amber Corbin, who is our new accountant. I'll introduce her. If you could let her speak, I think she'll probably have the most to add to the conversation, and Paul as well. But Eric Ostrander's following all the way from his vacation, and Elise Clausen is online as well. He was here for part of that discussion, and in the audience is Julie and Robin. And then anytime we talk about the contract, I like to ask Greg to be a part of that discussion, since he was the president, negotiated that, and so his input and recollection is always helpful too.
Okay.
So that's everybody I brought today, or asked to be here and has shown up to help be a part of this discussion.
Okay. Do you want to make a presentation at the beginning, or are you just ready for us?
Well, and I'd like to do a little bit of update for you guys.
Okay.
Last presentation was just a month ago, and since then we realized that we needed more services out of our accountant and a better format for everyone to understand, our board and the community and involved. And
Amber, welcome.
Not sure, can she hear us?
can you hear me, Amber?
No, she.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, she's got an audio issue of some kind. Krista doesn't have a microphone or something hooked up.
Can you guys hear me better now?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Amber came on really just 2.5 weeks ago, and through the holidays and leading up to this discussion, once we got information in the packet, we did work over this past weekend to try to be ready for this discussion. And what we submitted as part of our packet was the updates and changes and information that she had discovered through that process. And we wanted to note all the different changes and things that we've made as we transition to the new accounting format. Hope that was clear for you and much easier to understand. It certainly was much easier for me and the board to understand, and we've gone over those a few different times. Start there and take questions if you have those, and Amber is here, and Paul Dice, our treasurer, is here. I'll answer those as well as my.
Who would like to start?
Well, I have a question. Can you hear me? I get this would be for Amber. Oh, no, she doesn't have a microphone again. Amber, is your microphone working?
Yeah, we can't hear you, Amber. No.
Let me call her and I'll put her next to speaker and see if that works. That might be helpful.
Sure.
Try talking now. Can you all hear me? Oh.
I'm talking now. Can you hear me on this?
Getting double.
My phone's not connected. I'm listening.
If you mute,
I just muted her.
and then speak on this, will that be helpful?
It's picked up is what happened by.
I just want to make sure you all can hear her.
Yeah, it's. These don't amplify in the.
Can you all hear?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, I guess.
Oh.
I'll just hold this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what my question was, is this is your budget, the budgets are on a cash basis rather than an accrual basis, right? So if that being so, there's no way that we can see what it's really hard for us to determine what your for example, what your commitments are for unpaid contractors, because you're working on a cash basis, so we can't see what your actual, like, in the next quarter, we can't, there's no way for us to tell what your when you give us your cash basis analysis for a period, we don't know what your outstanding commitments are for unpaid contractors. In other words, we don't know what it's how much you actually owe and how much you actually have you've taken in, because it's a cash basis rather than accrual. And I find that so confusing. And this is a government contract that you've signed with Cannon Beach. Don't municipalities use an accrual basis, or do they usually use a cash basis?
You know, it's something that's usually determined when they file their taxes originally. It's kind of whatever way it's set. A lot of nonprofits do file based on a cash basis. And so once you kind of set that and start filing, then you have to maintain that. There are things we can do to help in the future to create kind of some accrual-based accounting system in the back so we can print your reports that way if that's your preference.
Oh, the only reason it is because I think it gives a truer picture to us looking at the picture, the whole picture of what it looks like. Because doing it on a cash basis, we just see these little snippets in time with nothing in the future. you see what I'm saying?
We can absolutely implement.
And I think that I know the chamber is a nonprofit, but they've signed a contract with a government entity, municipality. So it would seem to me that I thought most municipalities used an accrual type accounting system. So it would seem that since it's, you're in a contract with the municipality, it might make more sense to do that. And I think it'd be way easier for us to read. Now, maybe for someone like Barbara, who's a bookkeeper, it's no big deal. But for someone like me who isn't, I'm used to looking at accrual type budgets. And this is, I can't tell what's coming down the pike. And if you really are, how much reserves you really do have and how much debt you really do have, because it's being done in this system.
Okay, absolutely. We can definitely implement that. There's definitely ways to input stuff into the system where they can still have their cash basis system for their reporting as far as taxes, and we can print an accrual based set for you.
Okay, that'd be great. That would make a huge difference, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, I'm happy to implement that.
Trying to see where the bottom line is here,
My only question is on the balance sheet. It's the last page in our packet, attachment K. And current assets. We've got the amount that's in the DMO checking account, it looks like. Then there's a reserve amount in Umpqua Bank, and then an additional 20,000 DMO reserve fund income. Where is that money?
So there's two different checking accounts that hold just the DMO fund. They've separated those entities, so it's only the money that goes in and out of this program in those bank accounts at this time. The top two that you see, the checking and what that shows our words that the reserve behind amount, those are the actual cash value that was in your account specifically on June 30th of 2024. That following line, which shows DMO reserve fund income of 20,000, that was the net income at the close of the year. So essentially from your profit and loss, you can kind of go back to the profit and loss from the 23-24 year, you'll see that number.
Yes, I recall that.
And so that was extra cash not used.
That's
So that goes into your reserve fund so we can pull it in future years if necessary. So that's included.
that was okay. Yeah.
So
That was the balance after $150,000 of the reserve was applied, from what I recall. And so this balance, that makes the total reserve fund. It looks like you've got here then under liabilities and equity total, the DMO reserve funds are the 50,000 and the 147,000. And then essentially that 20,000 is a rollover.
yes.
But there's $217,000 in reserve at this point. Okay. Okay. And the current fiscal year budget was not included in this. I don't know if that was just an oversight in asking for it. Is that available somewhere? I recall the significant portion, maybe $126,000 or $129,000 was applied from the reserve to the 2024 25 fiscal year budget. Okay.
And it looks like you're assuming that after you'll get your quarterly and then you'll repay yourself from the money that you're taking from the reserve. So every quarter you're going to repay yourself 217,000. So it looks like what you're saying, this is in number 8 DMO's reserve fund. Then it looks like you're assuming that you're going to have $93,857 in reserve at the end of the fiscal year. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
If we hit the budget 100%.
So that's it. That was my next question. What do you do if, I mean, 93,000, you say it's about 15% of your annual expenses. What are you going to do if that doesn't occur? I mean, 96,000 is kind of cutting it slim.
It is cutting it slim. It wants to, I mean, the chamber operations would have to help, cover that as much as they could. I'm sure we'd have to have more discussions about that.
I don't know, he usually does a pretty good job of budgeting and has come under in expenses.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been very conservative in if you look at our past years, we've come under budget almost every year. And we're working very diligently and hard to make sure that happens again. So even though we've aligned the 124 to carry it forward, I'm fairly confident we will minimize that number significantly at the end of the year.
Paul has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
You're muted, Paul.
He's not,
Paul.
he's not muted.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't hear Paul.
What's going on? To call us.
Any idea, Rusty, what the issue might be?
And it has some microphone connection, but I don't know. Brandon, can you still speak?
I'm speaking now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So Brandon's working.
We try Eric.
I'm trying to speak. I have a really
No, we
poor
can hear you.
internet here.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
cool.
hear you.
Yep.
I can hear you.
Thank you.
It's got to be specific to those.
Is he unmuted?
He was unmuted earlier, yeah, because the icon came off.
So Paul just texted the other factor in that is we were very conservative on the income side of the DMO. Like we budgeted $503,000 of income from the DMO, which this past year was 529. So I'm sure it'll come in much higher than that. We went on we picked that 503 because that was a number that we could on. Incredibly low on the income side of that budget as well.
Well, I have a question again for the. On Schedule F, I'm just attachment F. I'm curious, is the allocation between the DMO and the Visitors Bureau just arbitrary? Because if it was allocated differently, then you wouldn't show a loss in one of them and you might show, you know what I mean? So how do you decide, because there was a loss shown, but it wouldn't have been if you had allocated differently.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that plays into budgeting also. And that's one of the things we're gonna be working on with recasting some of our financials and just so we can see them more clear and, you know, make better decisions in the future, so.
I think we need to keep in mind she's only worked for him for two weeks.
No, I'm asking her a question, I'm not asking her.
No, I know, but
Just
I mean, I think we
how it
need to just
works.
keep that in mind. These are a huge improvement over what we've received in the past.
I was amazed that when she brought up the fact that we could do this report in accrual rates. Sounds like that would probably solve a lot of,
It really would.
and that's of course gonna take some more time to implement.
Right.
And make sure that.
I will say that you're getting there. And I appreciate this. Yeah.
But I'm not sure if I understand your question, Lisa. I mean, you could reallocate them, but I think really what we're trying to do is get a realistic idea of what it costs to run the visitor center and a realistic idea of what it takes to do the marketing side of
I'm
it.
just wondering if it's just an arbitrary allocation or if there's what the reasoning is behind the allocation, because
Oh, isn't there a reasoning for all of that? A certain percentage of salaries and, I mean, it's not just an arbitrary.
No, we don't just make it up. We try to match it with past expenses and estimate what that's gonna be for the coming year. So that, you know, that it's balanced out correctly. And payroll and all that stuff is somewhat.
Right.
I would think every budget item you're allocating that is split, you know, some of them are dedicated to one or the other, but if it's a split one, you have decided on what the appropriate split is, and that's reflected here.
Yes, and looking at this, not it being heavily on the visitor center side and lower on the DMO, we'll revisit that as we go forward and make sure that that's more balanced.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, we look at the big picture and try and make sure that the DMO is structured right.
because if one shows a loss, it might not have shown a loss if it had been allocated differently.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
so.
Absolutely. I'm more and more confident with Amber's expertise. We'll be much better at that going forward.
Especially if she'll do an accrual thing, that would make so much difference.
Yes, we can do that.
Well, I noticed that, no, never mind, it's fine. Not yet, not now. I'll wait. I'll wait till I see the accrual thing.
I guess my concern is that for previous question, I referred to on 8 DMO at reserve fund, and here I go again, where is it? With the reserve potentially going much less than what you have, what you started with. I mean, if you end up with 90,000 and you started with 217,000, if you have a budget of 645,000 or more for 24-25 or 25-26, I guess 25-26, and how are you going to, where's the money going to come to reimburse yourself every quarter like you're doing now?
As Amber's pointed out, we're going to be looking at all that and making sure that we get that to a zero balance budget as we go forward. That's absolutely the goal. We don't want to be overspending and not having a balanced budget.
Do you have any areas where you think you might have to make reductions?
Really, we've been spending the last 2 weeks preparing for this meeting and diving into going forward. That's next on the agenda for us. So maybe looking at that. Amber and I spent hours and hours getting her up to speed on where we're at and why the numbers are the way they are. That we'll be working forward. Absolutely.
makes me just nervous.
Well,
Maybe I'm nervous.
I question and again, it's not in the packet, but the fiscal year 24-25 budget. You budgeted $503,000 in income. But you've planned to spend $626,000. So $126,000 above the expected collections. I'm just wondering why.
When we looked at the budget, we had been carrying that forward. The work that we've been doing, we kept that continuing. And we added staff to do the work that we were continuing to do, and especially in the market. You look at that budget, we also took $80,000 out of that marketing portion, trying to balance that budget down. We were still at a point where we weren't making as much because we started with such a low budget number. And that was the difference, and we looked at that to balance the budget. And again, we knew that we would be minimizing and working hard to get that back to a zero balance. Did I say that correctly, Amber?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. And I plan to do some more analysis in that area also, just to kind of see, where it's funding and where we possibly have room for improvements. And then we can have just some more further discussions about that as well.
And Jim, just real quick, I know you've answered this before, but I forgot the answer. It's on attachment E, 66500 professional fees. What are those again? Under general and administrative expenses. I just forgot what they were. So that's attachment E. And under general and administrative expenses, number 66500. I just don't know what that means, professional fees. I'm not sure what that is.
I don't have the detail on that here, but professional fees are. Amber, do you have the detail on that?
So a lot of it is IT support and that's probably a large majority of it.
What? I couldn't hear it.
HR firm.
Oh.
IT support, Moxie
That would be part of it as well.
is
for
a
this
large
year.
portion of that. There's also some attorney fees. I don't know all the details of that. Those will be some things that I'll be exploring. More insight on that.
Accounting fees in there too, Kim.
Yes.
Paying the accountant, so it's.
That's a separate line item for,
What is it?
yeah.
Accounting's at the top.
And then on that same page, insurance expense, 64000. And then for 23-24, there's nothing. So I'm just curious how come? Or what is that? Why is there nothing on 23-24, and yet there is, insurance costs the other years?
Absolutely. That is something that those items that I did discover that actually, and there should have been a small amount that was allocated in these areas. Currently, the chamber operations has taken over that expense. There were some items, which is also why these are a little bit different, just in the back of the system that weren't flowing correctly and pushing forward to the DMO reports. And so that one is flowing now and will be included in the future. Just so you know.
All right.
Any other questions on the financials?
Oh, I would ask that when you do when you do the, all this information in the future, if you could put at the top if it's accrual or cash. Because this doesn't say either one. I know it's cash because from previous conversations, but it would be great if you just had a heading that told us what it was.
I will absolutely do that.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions on the financial statement? Okay, so let's move to the contract.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion the past year as a council about how we're using our TLT funds, our tourism dedicated portion of those funds. And we first looked at the Tourism and Arts Fund, and which, both of these funds 10 years ago were revenues were around $300,000, 330 off the top of my head.
75.
And they've grown significantly over the 10 years. So TAF fund has grown to be more than $500,000 income now, to the point where we only got half of that amount in grant requests. So there's another $250,000 in that account that, as we've discussed as a council, are available to do some other funds. So the Tourism and Arts Commission is looking at that program on how we can fund kind of community enhancement projects that still fit within the tourism facilities definition by state law. So the chamber contract is kind of in the same category, right? The full 70% of 1%, whatever the collections are, go into that fund. And and you can see attachment A shows how the revenues have grown. And that reflects 2016 to present, 335,000 to 529. That's both tourism and arts and chamber. So about $200,000 in 9 years.
There was a couple of probably I'm assuming this is in a spreadsheet, but the error on the 2016, the first quarter, there was no payment or anything for the first quarter because the tax didn't begin until October 1st of that year. So that first 154,000 doesn't exist.
Well, this contract wasn't even signed till 2019. And you've included 2016, 17, and 18. Attachment B.
City, the 2016.
But I mean, this contract wasn't signed till 2019, right? I don't know what was before this.
Yeah, there was a contract before this one.
Yeah. Okay, and I have no idea what that said.
I'm just saying on this spreadsheet.
So you're saying 2016 is short the full year, but 2017 is a full year? And so the collections were a lot more in 2016 than 17?
That's correct. The first quarter, if you just cross that out, that didn't exist. Because that would be
okay,
July, August, September of that 2015 for the fiscal year end 2016. And that tax didn't begin until October 1st of that year. So that was just one thing that jumped out. And then the total missing at the end of that would change the total. So
obviously 2020 is skewed, but
yeah, those were COVID years. We've been looking at that, trying to figure out matching, but 2 months of closed and Amber, how those payments came. But grand total is very close in that fiscal year. Like, because we wanted to match each year what we received versus the numbers that you presented here. So 2020 was the only year I believe that didn't match. Except for the very first year. And we. So just for a point of clarification.
And then attachment D. Page 117 of our packet, if that helps. Shows from 18-19 through 23-24, and we're spending an average of 405,000, 419,000. COVID year, the next year coming back up to about 400,000, and then we start seeing some pretty big increases to 489, 645. And again, I can't remember what it was projected at for this fiscal year.
And as I pointed out last time when we reviewed these numbers, 18-19, we kept those numbers low because we were negotiating the contract. In 19-20, we rolled into COVID and we reduced our staff in half. So a lot of those staffing costs that you're seeing in the final 2 years of this weren't there in those early years. We've staffed up, we've added Sierra and visitor center staff, and we're currently looking for another visitor center staff person to replace one that left. So we're balancing that out as we go. So that's the large jump in that payroll.
But essentially this 5-year period, there's more than a $200,000 per year increase in marketing from the 2019-2020, which I guess is considered a full year.
In 2020, we weren't really marketing efforts as COVID. We really maintained our 2 print ads and social media. So we weren't in the marketing effort. There was no reason to try and bring people to town or encourage people to visit during COVID. Nobody wanted that. Certainly weren't going to do that.
Still an increase from 18-19.
Less than 100,000.
And then even 22-23 is 489,000. So I think what we're looking at, what we've been talking about is Cannon Beach is in this enviable position as a place that doesn't need to do a lot of marketing. And most people in town think we should be limiting our marketing. So I think that we need to consider modifying the contract so that those additional funds beyond a set contract amount would go to more of these community enhancement type projects. Again, that fit within the state requirements for tourism facilities, but something similar to the Tourism and Arts Fund. And I'm not proposing to go backwards on where the chamber has budgeted their revenues for the current fiscal year. But I think moving forward, we need to look at funding the information center at what it costs and limiting the amount of marketing. I don't think we can just keep adding to the marketing with the full amount. I think we could add an escalation clause for inflation, cost of living. So I think we need to look at those modifications to the contract. As well as it's nice to see these financials. I think we're getting closer, but I think we really need to, the language in the contract currently is not super clear about the reporting, or it's, I think we could clean up that language as far as what we'd really want to see to provide some oversight on this.
Well, my initial concern of happening or limiting that is if there's no escalation, when we were negotiating this contract, the chamber took a large cut by folding in the visitor center, and we reduced our funding significantly by signing this contract. And the reason we were willing to do that is because the contract would grow with the tax over time. And we would grow with the city and our needs and our marketing efforts and what we're doing would continue to grow as our community grows. I mean, that was the initial plan that we had going at the beginning. That was 7 years ago now, 6 years ago that we negotiated that. I'm certainly up to having a talk about cleaning that up because there's a lot of things in the contract that don't need to be there anymore, the additional funding clauses and things like that. And we want to review and assess the reporting metrics of what's in the contract. I think those can be cleaned up. So I agree with Gary on that. But if we cap the growth, then that will eventually lead to the decline of the program overall. But my concern is making sure that it's funded well enough that we can staff it and do the work. We're more than happy to have those discussions on, like, if you guys have input on what that work should be, we're happy to take that. Because we need to be able to adjust to the needs of our community when they happen. And if there ever is a downturn, then we're taking that downturn with the community. Our funding will drop just as everybody's does. And honestly, at that point, we probably need to do more marketing.
That's one reason I'm concerned about the last 2 years and spending all the reserve. But I mean, just looking at attachment D, we've increased marketing expenses $240,000 over from 18-19 to 23-24. And I don't have the 24-25 budget in front of me, so I'm not sure what that number landed at. So, but as I just mentioned, I do believe that there should be some kind of escalation, but I just don't think that it needs to be this open-ended, however much money is collected, we're going to give you for marketing.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing Gary say is why do we need to increase our marketing every year to the extent we are? Why? I mean, it just seems like, do we need more? I mean, do we really need more visitors? Are we having a shortage of them? Or I'm just not sure. And I mean, I think that, all the, that consultant who came in, he's really, very, very astute and very good and very talented at what he does. But I haven't seen any results from that. I haven't seen a better type of visitor. I haven't seen anything that would indicate that any of those efforts have paid off. So I just don't understand why we're increasing our marketing budget so much. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't understand it.
Okay, well, there's a multifaceted answer to that. First of all, there's no way to determine or if we have a better quality of visitor. Don't know how we would quantify that. We may try. We can identify who they are, where they come from, a lot of the information of that. I certainly think that we avoid a lot of visitors that we certainly don't want. We don't want to have spring break parties all over our town, which we certainly don't have. I mean, there's spring breakers, but it's not the wild frat parties, so to speak. I think we do a good job of avoiding some of visitors that we don't want. When you look at what a DMO does, and Gary's right about the community improvements. DMOs don't just do marketing. We aren't just marketing. We do a lot more than marketing. Marketing is actually a limited part of our budget. So if you want to limit marketing, then that's a portion of our budget. It's not our overall budget. We currently are working on accessibility and getting Moby Maps. We have a task force that we put together, and it includes the city, state parks, and various groups in our community that want to provide that. And that's a benefit not only to visitors, members of our community to have a Moby Map and access to the beach. That's part of DMO work too. So when Gary talks about stewardship messaging, we've incorporated stewardship messaging. And when we talk about community development or destination development, which is what the GMO's term, is that we want to take those tourism dollars and do what benefits visitors and the community. The Moby Mats is a perfect example of that. There is much more to accessibility that we would like to incorporate into the future. But to be able to do any of those additional funds, the reason we were able to do the task force and the Moby Mat work this year is Oregon Coast Visitors Association had a grant available to us. So we went out, we put the people together. We're still working out all the details to make that happen. Because just getting a Moby Mat isn't the whole thing. We're going to have to maintain those, put them out, keep them clean, bring them back. And that's going to take a community-wide effort, but we're leading that charge. If we don't have funding to do that, then we won't be able to do that.
And is that part of your budget for the last couple of years, working on that?
We've dedicated the time and the staff to do that, yes, to walk that forward. And that's not always an easy task. When we initially went to Travel Oregon for $100,000 grant to not only do the Moby Mats, but to do a wheelchair program at the chamber and do some accessibility work with the community. But we've also brought that in and we're working on that for the community so that we can let people know the accessibility options that they have here. So we're not just marketing for the sake of marketing and bringing more people here. We're marketing and messaging what we want people to hear about Cannon Beach. If we don't market for ourselves, then that's just left to the wide world to market. I think it's more important to be saying what Cannon Beach is than to leave that up to everybody in the whole world.
I don't think anybody's arguing that. It's just how much is enough. And curious about the Moby Mats and spending TLT dollars on them. I mean, can you justify it under marketing or justify it under a tourist facility with a real property of?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's up and down the coast. Seaside has it, Lincoln City has it.
We're embarrassingly behind. That's like Gold Beach is further ahead than we are on accessibility. That's embarrassing.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm assuming Orla looks the other way on that because it clearly doesn't fit within the state law.
Sure it does.
How?
It's
tourism facility.
It attracts visitors. It attracts visitors to the.
It's promotion.
And
So you're
overnight.
saying it
yeah,
would be promotion.
I could see how it could
Okay.
attract overnight visitors.
Probably better case for a promotion than for a tourist
I think
facility.
it follows under, I think it would follow under
It's
state.
very easy for me to, I didn't question whether it was doable or not because that came from Oregon Coast Visitors Association, who's affiliated with Travel Oregon, their state initiative and a reason that we need to be working on that to make it more accessible for our communities. So when our travel destination organizations at the state level are saying this is a good thing to do, then I'm on board with it.
Jim, I'm seeing your marketing budget and going up significantly over the last couple of years. And I'm looking at under 61,000 on attachment E. I see nothing about, I don't see anything there that would indicate you're working on accessibility issues. I'm seeing digital earned media, marketing services, paid media, partnerships, other. I don't know, how would we know, looking at this budget, that part of the marketing budget was being dedicated towards accessibility issues. There's no way to tell looking at this.
Well, we will address that with Amber and make sure that those are accounted for and put in there.
Yeah, because
A lot of the budgetary things that were issues is we were just working with what we had to try to continue to move forward. And there wasn't a real proper analysis of what it should be and what it needs to be. And Amber brings that.
okay.
Very excited to get
And,
this.
you know, I guess it's our job as a council to provide oversight. So we can't, when I see marketing, 6,100 here, 61,110,000, you can't expect me to trust that I'm going to know that there's some, accessibility expenditures here. How would I know that? I mean, so if we have to, it's really important that there's better communication, because I'm just looking at this. All I'm saying is, wow, marketing has just gone way up. Marketing means a certain thing to me. It's a very simplistic definition to me, right? And so it's obviously a lot more sophisticated for you, but you've got to explain that to us.
And I really wonder whether we should just continue with this unlimited amount, whatever the collections are, or whether we separate the marketing from the community projects and cap the marketing is points I think that we're all looking at. And I don't know whether that additional money should go into TAF. Should it go into another fund for those kinds of projects? I don't have those answers, but I think the mayor and the city attorney and city manager should look at where we could land on that.
Do you know what your marketing budget is for 24-25?
220, I believe. Amber, can you confirm that?
Give me
In the last packet. Last.
Wow.
I don't have the numbers to the last packet.
Couldn't be there. Are you saying it's less than it was for 24?
Yes.
I do see it at 220.
Correct.
220 marketing for 24-25. Okay. So it's $50,000 less than.
That's one of.
I think you need to add payroll and marketing together. That's your marketing expense.
I'm just trying to compare oranges with oranges here. If the line item says marketing and it's 271, 23-24, and they're saying 220,000 for 24-25. Say that 3 times. That means it's 51,000 less than last year's.
That's about what we cut out.
What's that?
That's about what we cut out.
All right.
And then at least there's no outlays for the accessibility yet because Aqua funded our Moby Mats. So we didn't have to pay for them. We got a grant from Aqua. So there's no outlay for accessibility. It's just that accessibility is coming. So we haven't had to pay anything yet because Aqua did it.
Payroll included in the.
Well, yeah, Sierra's worked hard on accessibility. Of course, Sierra's in there too, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
but
yeah,
we didn't, there wasn't money outlaid for the Moby Mats.
Are the grants included in any of the income?
I don't,
Is that, I wonder if Amber
that would
has.
be, I don't know.
Well, all the payroll and benefits are activities related to marketing, correct?
Yes.
So you'd want to add together the payroll and marketing numbers to show exactly what we're spending on marketing. I mean, you could also add in the general and admin expense, but marketing is kind of sounds to me like it's the direct expenses. And then the payroll and benefits obviously is the in-house work.
But kind of the point I wanted to get to about the Moby mat going forward. We got a grant for that. We've had staff in time, put time and effort, created the task force to get those. That's gonna be required to be managed going forward. There's gonna need staff time, there's gonna need people to do the moving and stuff. And that's gonna be something that is not gonna be grant funded going forward. So we're gonna have to incorporate how to pay for that. And that's something that we were looking to take on as destination stewardship and development project that we are doing. And we have the connections with our Oregon partners to do that. So we're pretty well connected to make a lot of these things happen on a region and statewide level too.
Can it not be grant funded through Tourism and Arts Fund?
I think you guys are working on whether that's doable or not currently, right?
That's something that the committee is interested in researching.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's definitely.
The person I'm on all three of those committees.
Yeah.
I'm on marketing, I'm on the TAC committee, and I'm on the accessibility committee.
And that's the direction we want to go.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, like I said, in front of you guys and in the TAC meetings, it's gotta be a partnership between the city and the DMO. It
Yeah.
just has to be. There's no way you could just do one or the other.
Right.
So.
And-
It's coming.
And honestly, it's gonna, I think, take a whole community effort to make
Right.
these things happen and decide what's better for our community. And that's kind of falls back to the clarity of places. I was hoping that we would have a broad section of the community provide input, which they did. David provided that report, which kind of gives us a direction. Before that report and that information, we would have to do those meetings and get everybody together to do that. David did a great job of connecting all the different, the municipalities, the businesses, the different community members, nonprofits, everybody in our community had some input into that, which really showed us what commonalities we all share and things that need to be addressed. And have we addressed any of those? Not yet, but at least now we have a direction and we know where we need to go. And as far as that taking on destination development, I think we're gonna be hand in hand, side by side, working to make those things happen. We have lots and lots of ideas on what destination improvements can happen. And we take those examples from our neighbors and partners from all around the state.
Well, I look forward to hearing that.
Staff.
Pardon me?
The TAC committee does not have staff. It's a volunteer committee. So somebody has to do the actual work of all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I very much look forward to seeing what comes out of David's. I mean, I participated in that a lot, actually. And I thought it was very interesting, but I haven't seen anything concrete happen, any change.
All of this work, all of it, whether TAP or the DMO or the chamber or the city, you need funding, you need the staff to do it, you need the bandwidth to do that work. And we're coming out of COVID and building our team to be able to do that. And I think we finally have a good team to do that work. And now we need to get the funding in line because clearly we need to get that wrapped up. And then we can start moving forward with the next steps of the project. But that's not stopping us from doing the changes and moving forward with the things that we have opportunities to do, like the Moby mats. You know, another pivot that we just took literally came from your last meeting on the marketing effort. You know, I got the same letter about the dog poop on the beach that you all did. Very explicit, well-written letter of the problem. After you guys mentioned it here, I went back and had a conversation with Sierra. It's like, we were already looking to talk about trash and waste management and things that came from Clarity of Place as something that we could start messaging and tackle right away. And so we were working out an idea on how to do that. Well, dog poop on the beach became an issue. So we want to do some messaging and get the word out for people that come into town, for our local community even. You know, what is proper dog etiquette on the beach? What should you do when you bring your dog here? You know, it's not just poop, it's behavior. But if we can get that message out to all of our visitors, then they're going to be at least somewhat informed about how to behave when they're here, how to take care of their dog poop. And I think that can help. One idea we had is putting together a map of where all those receptacles of getting poop bags and where to drop them off onto a map would be one simple step that we could do so people can find them. You know, we're really just spitballing that idea because it's only been a week. But it's definitely something that we see we can fit into our messaging and get that out there and hopefully make a difference. You know, we are paying attention. We're listening to the things and moving forward with things that we can manage within our bandwidth.
Jim, if the council decided to put a cap on the revenue that the chamber received every year in tourism taxes, where would you get additional income to do some of the projects you wanted to do under marketing?
Well, obviously, the first place would be to come and ask TAC for those projects. That's historically what we've done. But if you look back over the years since we signed this contract, we've cut down on our TAC requests significantly from what we were doing before. We never had the funding to do those projects. You go way back, and this maybe even before my time, we did website development, marketing initiatives and things from TAC that we wanted to do because they were restricted fund approved projects. But as soon as we started receiving DMO funding to do this marketing and the work, I began limiting those projects. If it was DMO or marketing related, I wanted to take that out of our funding efforts and not come and ask TAC for those funds.
But if you started to receive TAC funding beyond the capped revenue that you would get from these funds, wouldn't you be able to, couldn't it be specified for a particular project so that there might be a little more control over what it is that you're spending it on?
That's the way TAC works currently. I'm not in on the conversation, so I'm not sure how that's going to end up. But I certainly see us coming and bringing projects to TAC for, and again, that would still be whether we have the staff and the bandwidth to do that. That would provide the funding option. A good example of that is we designed. You guys funded that through TAF. I lost a key staff member and we didn't have the bandwidth to do it. That's why it didn't happen that year. We dropped down to 2 staff members and that was no way we could take it on that extra project. So we returned the money and now we wait to do that project again. So more than happy to take on that work and that projects when we have the bandwidth to do so. I mean, we want to be great partners and do what's right for our community and our city. And, you know, that's the bottom line of what we're working to do.
Jim, what revenues do you have besides the funds that come from the city
For the destination work?
or any work?
Well, we're talking about the destination DMO work. So that's all the information that's here.
I think he's asking what the chamber revenues are.
The chamber revenue comes from membership, from our events, and all rental there's the 3 areas that get our funding from.
Do you have a number on that?
Not off the top of my head.
And the reason I was asking, Jim, is that when we're talking about, say, Moby Mats, and, you know, there's a partnership, and I've not been involved with those discussions, but somebody's gonna have to take care of them, somebody's gonna have to store them. And I don't know if those things are resolved yet, but I think that sometimes those would be default decisions that people just assume it's gonna be the city. And so I didn't know if there was a funding source that when those discussions are happening, can they, is it kind of a given that those are city decisions or city responsibilities? Or is that something we can talk about or negotiate, you know, in advance?
No, we can absolutely negotiate those. You know, the task force got together to see if we could make these happen. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth about where to store them, how to store them, who's gonna keep them clean and blow them off, and we're working at that. We're talking to different nonprofits and seeing who's out there that can take care of that. We might even find some community volunteers willing to do that. But these are all details that are being worked out. You know, the initial phase that we're in right now is making sure that, you know, we have the Oregon Park and Rec involved and on board, because, you know, it's their property that we're putting it out on, so they have very specific steps. We've gone through many discussions on what is required. We haven't finalized that. We were working to get them. They're not going out right now. They're gonna go out next season, of course. And that's when we're gonna have to have all the details of who's managing, where they're stored, and all the details of that taken care of. So that's still in the process.
Bruce, the city, your representative on the thing is, whoever is the head of HVAC, whose name is escaping me.
It's Kelly.
Kelly, she's on the committee,
Yeah,
accessibility committee.
So she's the city.
Portion of the accessibility, talking about where to store the Moby Mats and that kind of stuff.
thank you.
A lot of moving parts.
Go back to Gary's suggestion of having the city attorney and yourself and myself go over some of the, and you guys go over some of the contract reporting issues, talk about the cap.
We'll of course sit and have those conversations about what's best, you know, what's best for the community and be able to do the work that we're in the right position to do.
Okay, and is there any other counselor that would like to be involved in that process? So Nancy and Brandon.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be there.
Gary, would you like to?
Of course.
Okay. So we'll work with city attorney, Bruce, Lily, myself, and the chamber. And go through the contract and make necessary revisions.
Okay.
Is that okay? Everybody? Okay, anything else? Pardon me?
Nope.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I apologize.
Carry on. Okay, we're at good of the order. Anyone have anything? You have copy?
Coffee with the counselors, my last coffee with the counselors.
Oh.
Robin, it's my last one.
Congratulations on all of your.
Well, congratulations on starting it.
I would totally.
So, yeah, so next Monday at 10 o'clock here. Lisa, you'll be here, right? Okay.
Okay, anything else?
You want to talk about the trees?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Please.
So. We have been able to find dates that work with everyone in December.
Right.
So.
December's off.
December's off. So.
You need to decide what you would like to do. Do you want to try to do one in January? Do you want to what's your thoughts?
Well, I think we have to have one.
Yeah, I think we do too.
Oh. So I don't, what's the choice besides January? Is it January or nothing?
I mean, it's up to you guys. It's, Eric is not available except for the first part of the month
Of January?
of January, so he's available until the 14th. We can look at date options. I did send out an email as far as night options go. There really weren't any night options for special meetings in January that worked with everybody. So do you want me to send out something to look for daytime options in January?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see
Yeah.
the choice.
And Nancy and Brandon are okay to come back and,
It seems weird to be invited.
yeah.
Unless we get it on the second or third.
Of what, January?
Mhm.
Well, I can do, I think I can do second or third, but I don't know what, if Eric can't do it.
So the other part about doing it before the 7th is we would need to
Swear them in.
swear them in beforehand, which we can definitely do.
Oh.
But it's kind of fun to do it in a.
Better to do after.
So we're basically looking from the 7th through the 14th.
Yeah.
Eric's not available. It's, I'm not.
Shoots. Between the 7th and 14th? Okay.
I think I have a day or two.
Well, we're not going to meet every day from the 7th through the 14th.
Oh, no, I know.
So, okay.
I know.
So, but I mean, our survey is going to be between the 7th and the 14th, and hopefully we'll find a day that we can.
I can talk to Ashley about the swearing in. I mean, maybe there's, we can always do it twice too. Just a quick one, if we wanted to look at the second and third as options to give ourselves more
But
options.
if Eric, can Eric make it on this? I don't know, if Eric's even around
Eric's available after the 14th
after the 14th.
or the 15th. I think it's from the 15th. Bonnie's not available.
Okay.
He's available.
And Eric's still on if you want to ask him something.
Oh, that's true.
Jen, why would we have to do a swearing in before,
We usually swear your counsel in at the very first meeting. I think that's what our charter says they have.
oh, that's right.
So, swear them in. We can always swear them in at a daytime meeting, but it is kind of nice to do one at a.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Was Deanna available that week? At all?
Tuesday, the 7th and the 14th, I'm available for evening meeting. And I think I might have given you another day or two, Jen, when I filled out the thing in there, but I'm not really available in those 2 weeks.
And these are the ones for the last one were night meetings and we were looking at daytime options,
I'm not.
not day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't do, Deanna can't do daytime from the 1st to the 14th?
I could probably find a day if you could. But we need what, a day and a half or something?
Is it?
At this
Deanna,
point, we'll go for a day.
let me ask you something, Deanna. Is this just for those 2 weeks, or is this a regular thing?
I'm actually taking 2 weeks of vacation. I haven't had.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're actually gone then. All right.
And I do have a full schedule. But anyway, I have a full-time job. If we can do a day, if we can find a day that works.
That's what we're trying to do.
I can, if we can find a day in there that works for everybody, I can figure it out,
Okay,
except the 7th.
7th during the day.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll send out a survey.
All right, I'll send out a survey with all the days that the council members is available and we will go from there.
Okay,
And then we will adjust the topics of discussion based off of your time.
okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?